Hello and welcome to the NeuroTechSF Hack Night for November 4, 21. Welcome to the wintertime and thanks for joining us this week. We've got a very exciting evening tonight, which is really cool. We've got a lot of awesome topics to discover. We may have some cool guests. This is going to be amazing. Presenters, people joining it. This is going to be wonderful. So let's get started with the fun stuff. So let's look at the news from last week to anything that's interesting with all these things. Yeah, my eyes are somewhere in here. First off, Kernel Flow and Sybin announced a pretty cool study authorizing, let's see, the use of psychedelics with the Kernel Flow device. So last week, I think we were looking at, with the academic package, you could get access to a kernel for your university. I thought this was a really cool partnership, simply because I get these periodic pauses on this PC. It's time for reinstall. Yeah, so I think this is really cool. From PTSD, absolutely. It's fascinating to see the amount of interest in this space. It's fascinating to see FDA approval for multiple studies. And I really think that now that it's possible for researchers to study, and now that researchers have these tools like Kernel, which give them FNIRS and EEG and all this other excellent information, it's going to be hard to deny that these substances really change the way the brain works, really change people's perception of reality, and that in some cases this can be very therapeutic. I think that prior to now, when we were dealing with it on a sort of recreational basis, and there was no way to prove the effects, prove the efficacy, prove the fact that this is really doing something, I think that created this sort of, is this really helping, or are people just messing around type of dilemma, I think, for regulators, for doctors, for clinicians, even for researchers. I mean, being like, I want to do a big MDMA study kind of means I want to get a bunch of people in a really good time and record what happens. So I think there was this kind of stigma, but it's incredible to see this big shift in the past 12 months. It really feels like kind of the follow-on from sort of the drop in attitudes of medical marijuana nationwide, right? So you look at it and it's like, now I think like half the states in the country, you can get cannabis prescribed, or you can get it recreationally if they don't have a medical program. And now we're starting to kind of see this pulling back on including psychedelics as sort of like the other substances. And I really think that's good. There's a lot of people that psychedelics would be very inappropriate for, but there's a lot of people that have conditions that they just want relief. They want anything to improve their day-to-day quality of life. So really, really exciting to see this news. Let's see. So investigational new drug. Let's go ahead and share it real quick so we can look at the article. Okay. So let's see here. Right here, I think this is kind of the part where they put it in the more business terms, but yeah, exactly. Without mind imaging, a psychedelic experience is just someone in the corner of the room telling you about the exciting things that they're seeing. But with imaging, I think we can take it a little bit further. So in this case, I believe it is ketamine. Yeah. So this is off of the ketamine treatment. So this is not the magic mushrooms like in Oakland, but this is the ketamine treatment. I've noticed quite a few clinics around the world seem to be willing to do this ketamine treatment, and it does seem to have very powerful effects. I personally haven't seen data on people going through the experience, but I know that it's significant. You feel it, you know it. It's pretty intense, and I've certainly been interested to get this kind of data. So I think this kind of study will open the door, and then I'm not sure if this data set's going to be public or if they'll share their data or if it's just going to be sort of proprietary. I would assume that it's going to be proprietary because of... Okay, so this is another interesting part. As part of Cybin's sponsorship of the feasibility study, the company will retain an exclusive interest in any innovations that are discovered or developed through its independent analysis. The study findings, kernel will hold the same rights relating to its kernel technology. So I think kernel has found kind of a good balance in terms of making it really clear that, hey, the things you find with the data are yours, but the things that we figure out about the kernel device relating to the data are ours, and so on, right? So maybe kernel is going to figure out some new ways to measure ketamine stuff or come up with some new sensor or whatever. Presumably that means it's their information. I'm a little bit unclear on, like, you know, if you use a kernel device and what happens if you didn't sponsor the feasibility study, but I'll leave that as sort of a good thing to talk about with your kernel rep as you're signing that contract. Okay, cautionary notes, yada, yada. Press release, cool. So ketamine, very exciting, very excited about using it for PTSD and long-term chronic issues type treatment. And it's really, really nice to see what yes, pulse light. Let's see. Oh yes. So just to let you know, one of the issues with FNIRS is the sample rate. It uses continuous light. It needs to measure the stuff over long time scales, and as a result, the data that comes out of FNIRS typically is not very time relevant to what you're doing. It's just kind of like a more long-term trend of what's happening, because it's hard to get that temporal precision. I believe that one of kernel's innovations is bringing that window down by using pulsed light. So by pulsing light at regular intervals, by measuring the effects, you can get a higher sample rate because you're not just doing one continuous measurement over like 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, but maybe you're doing, you know, a bunch of pulses that you can now compare in time, and you can say, oh, you know, 5 seconds into this, the pulse was reading this, but you know, 7 seconds into it, now the pulse is reading a lower value. So it basically, I believe that one of their big innovations was like, hey, you can actually get a time component on FNIRS. And I do believe the pulse light was related to that. Now, I have to admit, I'm just a tiny bit hazy on the exact specifics of which thing they did for the sample rate. So if I'm going to give you like a 70% confidence in that answer, and I know you're like, well, wait a minute, I was believing you when you were explaining it, but now I'm not so sure. Yes, that's the right impression. I'm a little sketchy on the details, but I do believe that's right. I would repeat this story in a bar, but not in a major conference. How about that? So, and I just want to give you the right level of detail on this one. Okay, another one that I thought was super cool from University of Minnesota Medical School. Let me go ahead and share the announcement and the paper and the GitHub. So let's just look at these real quick. Oops, that's the same one. Let's do this one. Great. All right, let's take a peek. Whoa. All right, I'm gonna have to reload. It doesn't want to share my screen anymore. Unless I'm already sharing. All right, let's try that. Yes, beautiful. All right, so share the screen. Great. Researchers boost human mental function with brain stimulation. Ooh. You see the side is getting stimulated. All right. In a pilot human study, specific human brain functions merging AI with electrical stim. This is, boy, wouldn't I be an awesome. I'm sorry. Okay, so N of 12 study, Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, of patients undergoing brain surgery for epilepsy. So, just to kind of give you an idea of a little bit of background when you're looking at these papers, things that jump out at me, just having looked at these for a while, are going to be how many patients, how many participants did they have in the study? And 10 to 20 is going to be like a pilot study. 50 to 100 is going to be like a larger study, maybe like a big pilot or a small regular one. And then something like 200, 300 plus, I assume is sort of a larger study that took a while to collect. The other thing that's also worth looking at when you're looking at these EEG studies is what's the requirement. So in this case, brain surgery usually means that it's going to be transcranial, as in there's going to be a device inside the skull that's going to measure or stimulate something, and it's going to be put in a very specific brain region. So these are really cool proof of concept demonstrations, because if you can do it with an epilepsy patient that's having brain surgery, and you prove the concept, you can definitely do it in other settings. It means that potentially Neuralink could do it. It means that potentially with the right BCI, you could just do it with EEG. So this is really, really cool. In terms of scaling it up, something that happened for 12 people having surgery at one hospital is probably not going to like hit the mass market next week. But that doesn't mean to say that a study should be of that standard to be interesting. It just, I would temper, this is really, really exciting. But when I see 12 people brain surgery, I'm like, okay, this is going to be experimental proof of concept for a little while. And that's totally cool. I mean, that's where we are in this process. But I just figured, hey, let's look at the news, but also say it's a ways away. They identified a brain region, the internal capsule, that improves patient mental function, stimulated with small amounts of electrical energy. So I don't have the full paper. Well, I kind of do, but it's paywalled. And so I'm not quite sure where they're stimulating. I'm not quite sure how much and how often and how long does the stimulation last and those other things. But they've got a brain region that they're targeting, and they've got their data available, and they have their MATLAB toolkits that'll tell you. Okay, so I would say that from this, I will agree that we're seeing a lot of electrostim articles. We did see the electrostim, I want to say, I think it was like a week or two ago. We looked at that paper from the Chang lab. And yeah, same here. Like, this is going to be something that isn't going to be, you can't take it to market tomorrow, but yeah, they showed the difference. So, okay, the depression example, mental illness, whatever. But here's the cool part. This was closed loop. Now, real quick, closed loop and non-closed loop has pros and cons. So closed loop, the idea is, I identify the specific moment when something is happening and I deliver the stimulation then. Non-closed loop is I'm going to go study for 2 hours. And so before I study, I'm just going to do a 20-minute brain stimulation thing to enhance the benefit of studying. So what doesn't make that closed loop is that there's no reading and then stimulating during a specific case. Whereas let's say I'm wearing a device and it detects that I'm distracted, and so it starts stimulating my brain so that I go, so that I focus up. That's closed loop. So there are times where closed loop systems will actually underperform the more generic version. I know that sounds strange, but there are other times where the closed loop systems will greatly outperform and just do way better. So just because it's closed loop doesn't mean it's going to be better. But if you get it working right, and if it's the kind of challenge that benefits from a closed loop system, then it is going to do better. So, okay, they have this algorithm that tracks the conditions that they're looking for. Like they have the state where they want to deliver the stimulation. And in this case, they use the electric bike analogy. But I have to say, I feel a little more comfortable having a machine pedal the bike than I am kind of getting stimulation when an algorithm thinks I'm struggling, but I'm picking on them. Okay, so all right. Their findings that are kind of like tangible are they have a marker that they have linked to mental illness that they believe can be enhanced using this closed loop electrostim. They have identified a target region that they believe is the place where you should deliver this stimulation. And they have given you the algorithm of, what decides to stimulate, and then how you measure what's happening. Okay, so anxiety got improved. So now we're kind of like, I feel this is a little expansive. Like, so we're saying it improves their brain function, and it improves their, again, I'm not trying to be preemptively skeptical. It just seems like a lot to pull out of 12 people. New approach for mental illness, clinical trials. Because the target for improving cognitive control is already approved by the FDA for deep brain stimulation. Now that's news to me. Wow. I'm going to look that up real quick. You'll have to give me a moment. I actually didn't catch on to that first time I read that article. I'm going to definitely Google that and be like, what did they approve and when did they approve it? Because that's interesting. Research can be done with existing tools and devices. Once the IRB says yes, and so on. Okay, let me just check any questions in chat. Typical voltage. All right, awesome. We got some cool comments from Alex. Loosely helping with some TDCS studies for insightful problems can help with releasing cognitive fixation. Yes, that is super cool to hear. Cognitive fixation in general sounds like something interesting. One of the issues that we have in esports is that novice players tend to get excessively fixated on something, and that they spend far too much time trying to engage with it because it's novel. They don't know what to do when they're encountering a new situation. But there's actually a handful of conditions that actually lock people up cognitively. The other one that's really interesting is while you're firing a gun actively, you're 100% locked in down the sight. So that's similar to target fixation that pilots used to get in World War II, where they would actually be so focused on gunning down the plane in front of them that they would follow it into the ground once they shot it down. So this cognitive lock, cognitive fixation is a real thing. It's interesting to know that with electrostim you can release it or reduce it. That's kind of cool. And I can tell you that if you use an eye tracker, you could probably use the visual fixation as a proxy for the cognitive fixation, because anytime you've got a visual fixation of more than 1 or 2 seconds, you can probably assume that person is just 100% locked in on that. So that's actually really interesting, Alex. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's something we're going to have to check around with once we start doing electrostim. But yeah, that's yeah. Oh, interesting. So, wow, that's cool. Sometimes game developers struggle with this thing where they've got something really obvious on the screen, and people keep missing it. Like they'll have a sign that says go here and it's pointing to the right, and the player doesn't know where to go. And then sometimes they'll have like a giant light shining on that sign so that it's more obvious and the player's not reading the cue that the light is signifying that the sign is right. Exactly. They're just expecting something else. They're thinking that there's going to be a different cue. So you can actually look at them bounce off of it because you'll see their eye kind of skim past it, right? But you would expect it if they engaged with it properly, their eye would lock onto it for a moment, right? So you need some way to kind of like prod them if you know that they're missing the cue. And then that kind of brings up this really interesting discussion of how to prod them. So we've been looking at things like visual cues. Like if we know that you're supposed to look at something on the screen and we know that you've missed it 2 or 3 times, maybe we just put a big old box that blinks around it and says, look here. I know that's kind of obvious, but I mean, to me, that's kind of like, why be subtle? Hey, right over here, that's what you're looking for. But then the more clever version is using cues, reading the fixations, whatever, and having the map like dynamically change, or maybe this electrostim. That would be amazing. But people getting stuck, people missing something is absolutely something you can kind of like see very clearly. And that's really interesting that TDCS can kind of help prod that along. That sounds amazing. Okay, Ibrahim asked about typical voltage ranges for this kind of electrostim. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think there are, TDCS voltages for stimulation. Let's just see if Google has kind of a scale. I know they use like cell phone and 9-volt batteries. Here, let's share this page and see if this kind of answers the question. I expect that this is going to be clear as mud, but let's take a look. All right, so voltages. Their reported constant 1 milliamp current is indirect current clamp circuitry is used, not a DC AC. So here they do a 2.5 minute stim, volt or current or resistance. So here's the voltage that they applied. I have to admit that like the triple combo axis that represents all three is a little hard for me to parse because I'm like, okay, so which one is actually on the y-axis? But in this applied voltage, let's say you get this injected current impedance and you get the body resistance in ohms. So yeah, I'll definitely get back to you on the exact voltage, and I'll see if I can grab some of the, actual values used. But I've heard periods of as short as 5 minutes, and I've heard of periods, like 20, and I think 30 minutes is the longest I've heard of anyone doing TDCS stimulation. But yeah, just like Alex is saying, 20 minutes sounds about right. And I think we can, I'd be happy to research the voltage amounts that some of the current devices, deliver. So something like a 0.5 milliamp to 2 milliamps. Yeah, I think Alex is right. It looked to me like 1 milliamp was what the study was saying. So yeah, I think about that ballpark. It's not a lot of current. The idea isn't to sort of zap your brain into a new configure. We're really getting technical here. It's more like it's meant to push or nudge or steer or change the balance potential resistance. So it's not like you're, jamming 110 volts into your brain and all this other stuff. It's much more of like, let's change the electrical resistance. Let's change the electron flow. And And like Alex also brings up, this is great, Alex. Thanks so much for talking about all this stuff with TDCS. With TDCS, you've got really usually you'll do 2 electrodes. So the typical TDCS configuration is 1 right up here, 1 right back here. And the idea is you want the distance between these 2 points to be shorter than the distance across your skull. Because if it's a shorter path on top of your head, then it's just going to go on your skin. You're going to feel like this, like you're putting electricity on your skin. It's an unpleasant feeling. Your skin has a resistance to electricity, so there's a maximum that you can put. Oh yeah, absolutely. This is great, Alex. Please let me invite you on screen. Tell us about which device you have, how you use it, measure it, all that other stuff. This is great. And okay, so
hey there.
Oh yes, I have the wrong speaker output. Here we go.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey there. So I have a TCT research grade TDCS device over here.
Wow.
Yeah, no, these things are pretty expensive. I was able to pick one up pretty cheap. So it actually ranges from like 0, but like lower end devices go from like 0.5 to 2 milliamps. So like right here, you can ramp it up. It says,
oh yeah, there it is. There's the current.
Yeah.
May I ask? Sorry to. What got you started with TDCS?
Oh, when I was in undergrad, well, I started with TDCS, like neuromodulation devices. Like back in high school, I went to like I had like a neuroscience and like computer science classes. So like we got a bunch of these devices to play around with because we collaborated with the University of Chicago. So we had a lot of resources for stuff like that. So I've been playing with these for a while, but then I acquired a device just because I came across it, and then I work in a neuroscience, and I work in the human computer integration lab at U Chicago, but I'm out in like Cali all the time too. So I picked up one of these devices. This one is special because it's a research grade device. So a lot of these devices, TDCS devices, you buy it online commercially. They are very low tech. You don't know if it's even stimulating your brain or not. So this one actually measures the passage of current and actually can tell that your like stimulation is occurring. With some of the other devices I saw in research labs, they don't actually know if the like current is passing through, and they can actually cause like a skin like problems, like not skin problems, but like I've seen redness and like people like reporting kind of like tingling pain, not like just tingling. So in those cases, you probably aren't stimulating the brain; you're probably just stimulating the scalp. So this one actually looks at the current input and output. And then this one is adjustable from up to 2 milliamps. They have a medical research version of these that goes up to 4 milliamps, but most studies don't do more than 2, and they usually don't go for more than 20 minutes. This one also ramps up. So it goes from 0 to 2 gradually at 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And then also, I think the medical version of this, what was I going for? It goes up to 4 milliamps for like 40 minutes, but you're not supposed to do that. Like just from what I've been reading in research studies and people telling me, don't do that. I've done up to 2 hours of TDCS on myself before. I've been able to taste metal, see flashes of light in my vision. I've been able to hear like high pitched ringing before. So like I've done some cool stuff with it, but I wouldn't like recommend like doing that too often. I've almost like improved my visual memory, I want to say, but like I would have to do more testing with that. But yeah, no, I would definitely say that sometimes for focus, this thing can help if you do it like every other day for like 20 minutes. I saw myself like not eating caffeine as much, so pretty cool stuff.
I have a ton of questions. Are you comfortable?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. What is the subjective experience of having TDCS stimulation applied to your brain like?
So I've actually done it with my friends too, and they say they feel weird. Like you don't feel anything really, but you might feel like just a slight like kind of itch, and you might feel kind of like a tingling sensation in your stomach sometimes. It's just like
really.
It might not be. Maybe something's happening, but like I was actually just doing it on a friend the other day, and he went around telling everyone that like, yo, Alex was doing this on me, and I felt weird. Like something in my stomach didn't feel right.
Wow.
But like usually just feel like a slight tingle, like barely an itch. If you keep it on too long, your skin will turn red. So you don't really feel anything. It's like very passive. It's a passive experience. The
Wow.
I don't think this one has the option for it, but the medical version of this one has a sham condition, so it actually will like say it's ramping up to stimulate, but won't
But it's
stimulate you.
not.
So you can like kind
Yeah.
of in studies you can do the sham conditions.
Right.
That's what we do with the electrical muscle stimulation too. Like we have sham conditions where like the AI behind the electrical muscle stimulation, it like the timing is way off. So it doesn't actually work the way it's supposed to. So then we can see like whether it actually works or not.
Right.
So that's one thing they do in studies is like sham conditions to see like will there be results when it's working the way it should be versus when it's not working the way it should be.
Right. Okay, that's amazing. And of the people that you've had try it, do most people like, are they indifferent? Yeah, some people that are like, I definitely want to try that again. What's sort of the reaction to it?
Well, usually it's like, this is so cool, let me try it. And they feel it and they're like, this is weird. Or like, they're like, I don't feel anything, but they're like, this is so cool. And they usually, so like, I've done research in psychology labs on this, like cognitive psychology labs. So we'll have a participant do a task while they're being stimulated or right after being stimulated. And I think it's just like the excitement of, I have something on my head that's stimulating my brain. So then they want to attend to the task more. They're more likely to complete the task, actually, like truly the way they're supposed to. Same thing with electrical muscle stimulation. People are like, oh my God, this is so cool. My hand is being moved by like the computer. So they want to do the tasks. So they want to come back. If they don't feel anything, it's just a pure excitement that brings them back.
Okay, cool. Now, Halo Neuro, their business model was this reduces training time, as in like, you're going to learn some new movement or a new technique or whatever. You do our brainstem on your motor cortex, it slows down the learning time. What do you think is sort of like the most practical application of TDCS that you've seen, or from what you've seen of it, how would you actually use it practically?
I haven't used it much myself for like motor control. Well, let me take that back. So we did one study where we were looking at embodied cognition and like hand gestures for learning motor metaphors. So something like she grasped the idea. Grasping is a motor movement, but it's an abstract concept like you're understanding. So we've actually seen people be able to comprehend those motor metaphors faster in those studies. But those are kind of inclusive. Those are just research studies. I do think that if you were using it for something very like it has to be low level motor movements. It can't be like higher level processing usually. Like kind of like tennis swings or something like that. If you're using it for tennis for like improving your aim or something, I can see that.
What about like keyboard and mouse? Like if you were playing a game, do you think that that's too intense or is it doable?
No, I think like keyboard and mouse is exactly like what it would be good for. That's kind of like where I'm at with it right now. We're like doing TDCS. We're doing this electrical muscle stimulation. We're also looking at TMS, so the transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's a lot stronger. They can actually apply magnetic pulses to the motor cortex and have like your hand will move.
Aren't those stimulators pretty big?
Yeah, they are. They put like a huge magnet and they're loud. They give you like headphones and they're just not very practical for personal use or like at home use. So it's very much like medical academic research. TDCS is something you can just do at home. Like it's very accessible. And so like I know the Halo headphones, I was looking at those for like studies like when coronavirus hit, like I had to quit that study because I couldn't have people coming into the lab. I was thinking like, oh, what if I can like send people a pair of Halo headphones or something for a study? So that was cool. I've been talking to like Cody Rawl from Text for Psych he's a YouTuber. I know he's done a lot. We actually met up in Chicago, and I think he's back in Cali right now or something. I don't know. But he does interviews with like Halo motor, like headphones, like the CEOs and whatnot, and they have like they've become like really good headphones too. So I feel like maybe like auditory processing or something might be able to be improved with that, like such as like learning perfect pitch, being able to identify a pitch without having a reference note. I feel like there might be implications in that area. Like you might be able to find there.
That's actually really interesting. Perfect pitch training.
Yeah, you can look at like absolute pitch. Yeah,
that's actually really interesting. I know that musicians talk about that a lot, and I don't mean to pick on them. Have you ever? So there's a startup by the name of Plato Work that did some presentations here last year at Buzz in Review, whatever. I'm not asking you to either endorse or try. You know what I'm saying? I'm not asking you to give us like a thumbs up or thumbs down, but do you feel like for people that want to experiment with TDCS, is that a good device to start with? Or do you think that there's another device that you consider kind of like a standard reference for maybe the one that you showed off? Like maybe we can...
So I'm not familiar with Plato. So this device is TCD. This is a research grade device. This is like $1,000 originally, something like that.
No. That's let's. What's the name of the manufacturer?
It's TCT. Just
Okay.
TCT.
All right,
TCT.
cool. So, TDCS. Let's find TCT
so
research.
This one gives you a lot of functionality, gives you a lot of information. I picked it up pretty cheap, so that's why I have it. You can honestly find TDCS devices for like less than $100 online. And the thing is, like, it's just like a 9-volt battery that delivers like an electrical current between like 0.5 and 2 milliamps. Like these electrodes that like are connected to the sponges, and you like place them on your head. I have like a whole head harness. Some of them even have just headbands that you put on, and you can just put it under there. They cost like less than $200. They essentially all do the same thing. Like it's just an electrode delivering an electrical current from a 9-volt battery. Like it can only vary so much.
Yeah, I guess to whatever extent one trusts the circuitry, you can say like, well, that research device is probably going to be pretty precise about how much voltage it's delivering.
Oh yeah, this transcranial. I think I've seen this before. Yeah. Oh, this is what you said.
Yeah. This is TCT. Yeah.
Oh, the Plato is the whole headset. I haven't played with that one yet. Maybe I'll get my hands on a Plato, but I've just used these simple ones that are like you stick it on somehow.
Okay, last question. I was asking, Plato currently is in TDCS mode. Later, they do have the ability to add TACS later, but they're still working on that other stuff. What's your take on the merits, the pros and cons of TDCS versus TACS? Because that comes up a lot. And when people want to stimulate, they're not sure which one is like more effective and which one's more benign. So if you can just give us to whatever extent you feel comfortable addressing the topic.
For what I can talk about, like I've mostly done TDCS just because it's accessible to me. But like I said earlier, it's not focalized. You don't know if it's actually stimulating the region you're going for. Like if you want to stimulate the motor cortex, you place it here. You might place it somewhere else to complete the circuit. But like you don't really know that it's stimulating that specific region of the brain. Like it also like the current spreads out across the scalp, so like you lose some current. The other methods, such as like TMS or TCAS, you may be able to have like a high definition focalization of that. So you might be able to concentrate the current a bit more on the region over the region that you want. It'll still spread out, but you're able to concentrate that current there, so you can have better like you can have more confidence that you're actually stimulating the region that you want. And so when you're working with different montages, you might be able to actually like if you're taking a scientific approach, you might be able to like with studies and everything and collecting data, you might be able to see greater differences in control better. But TDCS, there's a lot of room for error. So it's very much like I like to do this like personal stuff, try it out for myself, try some studies in the lab, but I won't quit my day job to do a career in TDCS research.
I gotcha. Okay, so then let's summarize it like this. TDCS is mild, benign, well understood, and is available with very cheap hardware.
Safe, has been done in lots of studies. So,
and for people that are doing specific brain region targeting, they want to have a higher precision experiment or really focus a thing or whatever, then TACS for those folks is sort of like, that's why sometimes that gets used.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, I can definitely talk more about this stuff sometime later. I can collect some research or whatnot. So always glad to come to these things. I have fun here at Neurotech X Hack Night.
Thank you so much for talking about that. That is really great. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, always wonderful to have people join us, talk about areas of research and interest. Cool. So in this case, let's just link the Nature paper itself, and then we'll take a look at the GitHub as well. Cool. So cognitive control, the ability to withhold the default response in favor of a more adaptive choice are common in depression, addiction, and other mental disorders. I'm just going to take a little aside here and say, this is one of the reasons that I find gaming to be a fascinating test bed for things that are sort of very important and also very sensitive to people. Like if you want to tell someone, hey, we're gonna diagnose your depression or something like that, I think that's immediately intimidating, which is, you know, fair enough. They understand the scope of it. But there is something really cool about what is your ability to inhibit a response and override that. Like how strong is your executive control and where can you do it? Because one of the things that I've noticed about games is they really set you up for this, right? Almost every game has this element of your default action will be to do X, but the better thing, if you want to win, is to do Y. So this is one of the reasons that esports was really, really, really interesting to us, is because we consider it a proxy for this sort of executive control training, which is if you're really good at sort of inhibiting automatic responses within a game, our hypothesis is that transfers over to other things in life. So that you can assert that same executive control in other settings. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Here they have proof of concept that for people having intracranial monitoring. Let's see. They also show that closed-loop stimulation upon detection of lapses in cognitive control. So unfortunately, again, in the abstract, they don't really mention what is their criteria. I would be really interested in what they consider. But all right. Small number of electrodes. And yeah, this improves the command. So I did think that was neat. Here is the data that they made available. Sorry, so this is MATLAB code, and this is like the data set is right here. So you can actually download the EEG. I think that's really cool. Now these are in MATLAB format, so hopefully you have MATLAB through your educational institution, or perhaps you purchased a MATLAB license, but you're going to need that. And yeah, so I'll go ahead and link the data set. I'll link the GitHub. And yeah, I don't have MATLAB on my systems, and I don't feel like installing Octave. Oh boy, whatever the heck it's called. The fake MATLAB. So here's the data set. If possible, I'll try to grab the paper for next week. Sometimes I buy them like I did for the Chang paper or whatever. But either way, I can probably put that together for next week, and let's go look at what they considered. My hypothesis is I'd love to see them use beta for this, but let's see, is that what they use, and you know, how did they identify it? So I do think that is pretty cool. Okay, so finally on the topic of electrostim, and I promise I didn't really plan this out this way by accident. It looks like we've got the topic queued up, but I assure you that it's not normally like. Here is our electrostim and detection device, a scant $900. 20-minute session, 3 days a week. You get your brain training and optimize your brain waves during your Uber ride. I don't mean to laugh. It's just, of all the places, I don't think I would. Maybe Alex can chime in if he's ever done a cab or an Uber for electrostim. Okay, so yeah, over the course of 8 weeks, you will ascend from mere mortal into Marvel superhero. You can expect comparable results. 8-week course. They're going to have 16 courses, and you can awaken your genius. Now, It is cool that this device combines EEG neurofeedback, heart rate variability, and electrostim. They're also targeting specific frequencies for stimulation, so more gamma, more alpha, more theta. I don't know if these are the only 3 waves that they claim to boost, or if this is just the ones that they used in the example. Sometimes when you're targeting specific bands with a particular technique, you'll find that you can stimulate some of them, but not all of them. So anytime I see people mention like 3 out of 5, I'm like, okay, you think is that the most important ones, or is that the only ones that this works on? Here again, we're talking alpha, gamma, and theta. So I don't see references to delta and beta, which is fine, but it might mean that they don't feel that gets stimulated very strong. Okay, and their goal was gamma neurofeedback. So talking about brainwaves and what they do, this is a very lengthy topic. I would be open to doing an experiment where we record various stimuli in EEG and we look at what's the difference. This is kind of like one of the standard experiments we can do. And things like, okay, read a book or look at a YouTube video or play a game or play some chess, do math, stuff like that. So if you pick different enough tasks, you'll be able to kind of see the difference. Gamma typically will be kind of like the creative type functions or more like a flow state type of thing. Now, flow state is a very thorny topic because a lot of people want it and people have different definitions of what is flow and what is focus and so on. But gamma, low gamma and high gamma are associated with some of those eloquent and complex type actions, cognition, verbalization, and so on. So gamma is a good place to start if you're looking to do those kinds of things. Creativity, public speaking, painting, those kinds of things, gamma would be stimulated. Okay, it can read up to 50 hertz plus, so I don't know what type of sample rate and other things they have. Now, let's look at, these are the Eno headphones. I don't know if you all can see these on. Okay, cool. Ah, Morgan, beautiful. Are you ready to join us on the stage? Whenever you are, I'd love to have you. Okay, so this is an example of a kick-started EEG headphone that we funded 2017. So I think it's been 4 years. The only problem is, look at the sensors here. This one kind of touches my head. This one doesn't. Now, before you laugh, yeah, it's not perfectly smooth. I know it's a little crooked, but that being said, human beings have that. So when you have these fixed electrodes like this, rigid design, a lot of the times you're going to have fit issues. So I can tell you that with this device, not much came of it and so on, but I can really only read the left electrode, and it doesn't matter how much I position it around or try to bend the thing. It just doesn't have a good contact. So when I look at this design, these pads, without trying to sound super critical, if you don't get this part of the design right, you can have a lot of fit and contact issues. This doesn't look like it has a lot of travel, which is sort of like an even worse version of this. And I don't mean to be super critical. Here they have like it's meant to be like a spring, but I can tell you this is actually uncomfortable to put on your head to the point that it's getting a good contact. I mean, it feels like you have these 6 little spikes poking you wherever it is, and that's because you do. Okay. You have, so these EEG sensors, I think they look nice, but I can't see what is inside. And I'm not sure about that form factor. That looks like you could easily have contact issues with your head, depending on the shape. I'll also say, without trying to sound too critical, that trying to get a pair of headphones and an EEG and a stim device all working at the same time is really difficult. And again, I know that sounds like I'm being, negative or whatever, but with these, the audio quality and Morgan, hello. Now I don't have your audio quite yet, but yes.
Is it working?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
Hi, Morgan. All right, for everybody, Morgan joins us at the NeuroTech Hack Night tonight, and I'm so happy. I hope we get to see you with some regularity, and I'm so happy to have you. Welcome, everyone. Morgan is one of the founding member. He is the founding member. He is NeuroTechSF, the original, the alpha and the omega. Morgan, all right. Thank you for joining us today.
It was the garage. That was the original. But it's great to be here, and I don't have anything prepared yet, but we do have some guests arriving in a couple hours. Mm-hmm. That are going to talk to us about this. It's called the Virtual Winter School. This was posted in tutorials, I believe. acslab.org, Winter School, the Virtual Winter School on Cognitive Modeling. And that's going to include both cognitive science modeling as well as neuroimaging of cognitive tasks. So they're doing fMRI analysis as well as ACTAR and those kinds of neuromodels and Nengo. So it's been a long time, so I don't know who's on with us right now, but we used to. Jaden was I'll drop links. Oh, good. So you can get the great. Nengo is something that we had talked about covering a long time ago in neurorobotics. That would be, so I've got a lot of catching up to do in terms of where people are with things. Last night was a presentation, there's the Nerdtech Showcase.
Yes.
So did you catch that?
Yes, I had to watch Ori's presentation. We worked on some of those projects over the while, so
I saw you with I think I see Curia code.
yeah. We gave him the so for the project with the keystrokes, we have this really fancy LSL activated keylogger, so that you have these really robust timestamps. It's fully event driven. We actually had to separate the channels because mouse is a continuous sampling device and keyboard is event driven. So we had to generate two different streams. But yeah, we have a piece of code where if you're trying to get OS input, you install that and you'll get millisecond accurate LSL timestamps. And so that's how he was able to collect the keystrokes. But it was very funny seeing it on the GitHub and he's launching our Curia IO process, and then the recorder. We gave him the LSL recorder so that he could collect the stuff. And Morgan, I've been thinking about you. We actually forked the lab recorder repository.
Yay.
And we put all of our code changes. Now we have not issued a pull request yet, just because it's been so chaotic. And I'm also concerned that they may reject it, but I think we will actually go ahead and issue the.
Well, if they reject it, they'll have cause, right?
Oh, that's fine.
It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to necessarily be something, incredibly negative, but they will,
of course. Well, I don't assume that they're interested in the forecast.
I would assume. I would assume that no matter what, that they're gonna drop it into, LSL's like really a collection of tools, or at least the LSL main has got lots of applications as well as kind of the core LSL, right?
Right.
And this would be essentially a replacement for a recorder.
It would be kind of like a Windows CLI-based recorder, because right now Lab Recorder is GUI only, and that's really the challenge, is that you can't automate it, you can't do anything with it. You have to interact with it through the window, which means you can't script any of it.
Got it. And you did this together with the Blue Muse developer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And he basically.
And so this is someone who kind of brought Muse LSL to Windows himself.
Yeah, and we thought it would be really neat if we could provide like a Windows-based LSL recorder that gives you everything you need, has this amazing flexibility. It might have some functionality that they don't want, but I have to say, like, it's very robust. So it took us a while, but we did recently actually reintegrate our code with the fork so that we can actually do the pull request. So we'll see what happens, but I think we're getting ready for that.
Gotcha. Well, I jumped in because I wanted to see how Crowdcast worked, but you were in the middle of something. You guys are talking about flow. Yes.
Well, let me ask you: do you think that those sensors look like an issue the way that I do? Or here, I'll share the screen. This is this ElectroStim device that has both EEG and the ElectroStim. But I was just looking at the depth of these electrodes, and like, sure, I could see this fitting on some people, but I also think like with this rigid design and with this much travel, I could see a lot of people where this doesn't work very well.
So this is Indigo. I'm just seeing how I can. Sorry, I've got multiple keyboards in front of me.
Oh no, no, it's okay. This is
see what this looks like in terms of a little blow up. I can't quite see it from there. So what's the?
This is a TDC. Sense.ai. Here,
Sense.
Let me drop the link here in chat. This was just posted on NeuroTechX today, so I thought that was a cool thing to look at.
Got it. Funded in 3 hours.
Well, if you know how many you're going to move and you know what your price is, you can make sure you get funded. But yeah, no, I think I can't imagine getting that device built on $175,000.
So, gotcha. So they're doing. So it's got its auditory stimulation built in. I mean, it's headphones as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, it's from Whistler.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That just makes me think of the old AI conference that be held in Whistler so that everybody could ski.
Yes. I went to one retreat in Washington State that was like 4 hours drive from Seattle. And then I realized some conferences are held in vacation destinations.
Yeah, I was like, I don't ski. So it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Spend more time with the conference attendees.
They would have the workshop, in the evening. And okay, I'm trying to switch between these different pictures. Right. Does anybody know the? They're doing photobiomodulation as well.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on?
But are they
snake oil or legit?
Well, it's legit. It's just how,
Right.
There are some that will put a flashlight up your nose.
This is science. This is
well,
what science
you
looks
know,
like.
there's accessibility is a big thing.
Oh my-
So there's a lot you can do in the nasal cavity.
So wait. Wasn't this a thing in Total Recall? The original movie with Arnold? He had this capsule up his nose. I didn't realize he was doing neurophotomodulation.
A lot of that, a lot of Total Recall was a documentary.
It was. Yeah.
Ahead
of its time.
There was something up as, yeah, wasn't that the tracker though?
Yeah, the capsule, yeah.
Like it didn't really need neural contact.
True.
You
Yeah,
know?
okay, yeah. It was just there.
You know, there's you can get, I mean, this was the old way to lobotomize, was to go up through the nose.
Wow.
And
okay.
also, well, it was, you could basically push a nail up through without, you know, hitting much else. And it's also how we can extract some neurons. But then some people have been doing photobiomodulation. The person who works at it's the Weiss Institute, spelled WYSS, has, you know, some really interesting results on photobiomodulation, like at gamma frequencies for like plaque removal or.
Yes, I remember reading those articles. I also want to say that there was like a flickering LED experiment where they figured out your alpha peak, and then if they put it below your alpha peak, you see it as a continuous LED, and if they put it above your alpha peak, then you see it as a series of pulses.
Well, I certainly like it when people, you know, try you know, do things based on your EEG spectra, right? So find it's fine. So the Y Center, I guess I'm getting the Y Center CH, isn't that Switzerland? But I'm just going to drop this here just because it's I keep hitting the wrong keyboard. Just because that looks like their image is like a fancy free surfer segmentation.
Wow.
Well,
Looks cool.
It's probably can't blow up there. They could just be using the same color scheme, but that's maybe not. Okay. So sorry, tough to tell. I mean, right. I think you were going off of depth, you know, from a still a pretty, you know, I wouldn't say any of these are very. I haven't watched any of the videos, but they're not very. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Oh, weird. Yeah. Gamma grade sensors. Not sure what that means, but but that is a funky looking. It's a funky looking dry electrode. Still not very revealing. Specialized LED frequencies up to 1024. Okay. I wonder if they're doing. Oh. So the image personalized boosts for neurofeedback. So the image that's pointing to like 8 spots when you scroll down, is that supposed to be that's their LED?
Yeah, it looks like that's where the LED array is for this stimulation.
Okay.
Because I would only expect The electrostim, I think, is not those sensors, or maybe those are, because it shows it underneath. I mean, these are the only three that they have.
But then they've got this pulse ox built into the.
Yeah, that's where you get your heart rate stuff.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, that's it's just, it seems like the LED is literally just a flashlight. Like, there's no sensor.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right. I think it's lights.
Okay. So, I mean, they're, yeah. Obviously the big problem with I mean, they actually don't even say what, I mean, they can do a whole range of frequencies. So, I don't know what they think they can stimulate with these LEDs.
I wasn't sure either.
It's obviously, and they're obviously not really trying to do anything to get past the hair, which if those are sitting on hair, then you're basically not getting much at all.
Right.
If, depending on the frequency, you certainly can get into the head. I mean, into the brain. But yeah, it's a question of what substances do you want to absorb those frequencies? So NIRS or FNIRS is obviously just trying to get absorbed by hemoglobin,
Right.
or that's what its contrast effect is driven by. Well, oxygenated versus deoxygenated hemoglobin. Yeah. So and I'm just looking at the costs.
Yeah. So
DIY biohacker, $20,000.
Oh yeah, no problem. So this is kind of where I was. This company for $1 million had to figure out how to make their own headset, how to make their own EEG electrodes here, how to get this EEG, and then get all of it working. So what I can tell you is they were hoping to do this in 2 years. It took them 4.
All this? Is this in their description?
When I kickstarted it in 2017, they said their delivery was 2019. But I can tell you it did not happen.
Okay, and so they've switched, and they've reissued on Indiegogo.
No. So this is a different company. But what I'm trying to show is this team of 4 people. It's a big challenge to make an amazing headphone and an amazing EEG for a limited chunk of money. And if the company has never done that, they might struggle with both pieces. And I know that sounds like super critical, but in this case, not only is the EEG bad, but the headphones are terrible. So this device, I think, came together as sort of it didn't really gel the way that they were hoping. And so I think this project is a little bit of a risk because you're talking electrostim and headphones and EEG and photo stimulation. So that's a lot to get pulled together in a year. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know what photobiomodulation. I mean, the infrared light therapy. Yeah, like what we've talked about is 40 hertz stimulate, or the animal work and cellular work that I'm forgetting the woman's name, but she's at the Weiss Institute, and it's a Chinese name. She's worked together with the guy that did the temporal interference TDCS. let me pull up that paper at least.
Okay.
Keep correcting it wrong.
And just for super quick, I'll show the electrodes that like Neurosity is using that I consider excellent, which are these Datweiler soft pulse electrodes. Now these come in two forms. This is the short hair version. So this is what Neurosity ships, but they do also have sort of a long hair version. So you get to choose kind of the length of these arms. They can be either in short or long form, and long is really good for getting through hair. So if you don't have hair, short is perfectly fine. If you do have hair, long will definitely get through that. But these are nice, rubber, excellent contact, and very comfortable.
Sometimes when searching for one paper, you find something even cooler. And I'm about to hit return on the wrong keyboard again. So magnetically induced temporal interference for focal and deep brain stimulation.
Oh yes, Tokyo. Alex was talking about TMS earlier.
Cool. So I want to put a pin in that because that seems really interesting. Not what I was looking for, but I haven't checked in on this particular area for some time. And look, here's the science reports. Now this is a great group. So I recognize one of these authors. So let's. I'm just gonna move this keyboard because it's confusing me. Okay. So here is variability of electric fields during transcranial temporal interference stimulation. And this has the second to last author is Thielscher, and he's the principal investigator behind the open source project SimNibs, which I'll put, which is simnibs.org, but then it goes to a much longer, I'll drop this in. So SimNibs is probably the best supported finite element package for EEG, for TDCS and now TMS modeling, or I forget which it started with first, but a really great group there in Copenhagen. So yeah, whenever I see anything from that Axel is on, it's great. And it looks like, I mean, there's a bunch of really great people here from Oldenburg too. So would highly recommend seeing what they're doing. But that was, again, not the paper. Or, like this temporal interference work started with this guy at Harvard. It was like 2017. I want to say June 1st, it's in Cell. Nope, that's not going to help me. TDCS. Okay, somebody's done some mouse stuff. Again, wow. Yeah, I've got to really up my, I see that, my bibliography on temporal interference stuff is woefully out of date now in 7 months. Because, this is, a nice paper called just the biophysics of temporal interference stimulation. But let me keep going here. Gotta go back. If anybody else can find this, or if anybody else is okay. So I found it, and yeah, totally embarrassed that I've forgotten his name. But as you can see here, the last author is Ed Boyden. Just one sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I was giving myself time to overcome the embarrassment of forgetting Ed Boyden's name. So this is the paper that, yeah, and I was right, June 1st, Sal. I want to say that Lei Hui Sai is perhaps the person who did the 40 hertz photomodulation. And I could be wrong. But anyway, Ed Boyden started this with, controlling phase at multiple stimulating electrodes. So it's such that, they would temporally interfere and superimpose at a deep location. So you'd get stimulation in a deep site without stimulating the intervening tissue, right?
And so they would intentionally put it at a specific phase, or that was out of phase with the rest of the brain?
No. It's like controlling it. So this is why SIMNIBS is so important, right? Because this would be easy to calculate if I've been reading. I'll find the name of this book, but it's a great book on mathematical modeling of the brain. If our brains were spherical, and
if they were a perfect sphere on the edge of a cliff.
Right. So she starts the book with spherical cows, right?
Nice.
Of course. Because it goes to an old problem that a mathematician was told, where he was just like, okay, I can solve that if you assume that the cow is spherical.
Yes.
And so this is the problem with the temporal interference stuff, is that spherical solutions are analytic. Anything else of realistic geometry and heterogeneity, conductivity that's heterogeneous requires, real simulation and, computational simulation. And it also means that your ability to model that person's, piece of meat, that head, with its bone, its blood, its skin, its, all of its, the white matter fibers,
right.
All of that. If your simulation deviates from that, then you're not going to get the temporal interference.
Right.
Or as you further deviate from it, you will get less and less of the interference that you intended, and potentially other kinds of stimulation in other areas, right? And that stimulation in other areas, which is not included in your simulations, at least currently, could result in further stimulations because those brain areas are connected, right? So all of the unknowns about the brain come into these temporal interference models and make them, kind of theoretic. So that's why I'm curious about these newer papers to see what, if anything, people have done to build on this 2017 paper. But let me just pull her name because I want to say she's been doing I mean, definitely got some. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the papers that are specifically like 40 hertz.
Right.
Maybe if I could say Wise Center and Boyden, or is it Wise Institute?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the Wise Institute for Biologically Inspired Engineering is where you want to, what you want to check. And oh, of course, now they've got a big COVID thing on their front page. I guess that's probably
Everyone's been using COVID to try to get grant money or research money.
you know, like, well, COVID for very good reasons is
absolutely
sucked in a lot of. I like that they've got a soft robotic glove for neuromuscular rehabilitation. How are we doing on time? Okay, 7.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing their light. Or, I mean, I don't know of any better photobiomodulation. If anybody's got anything that they would suggest.
Now, this is a study I found, but I have no idea if this is like useful.
I can have okay, so you see why I wasn't kidding about intranasal, right? So yeah. So these, I mean, I don't know either, in the sense that like this is it Vilite? Is it supposed to be pronounced? I think Dimitri was pointing at Vilite. So that's the free EG32 developer. Do they have a website? Well, yes, they do. Yeah, we've definitely talked about this device before. Again, I don't think we've met anybody who's used it. Or
I've never heard of anyone doing photobiomodulation during these hack nights or at Noise Bridge.
So I liked the fact that they were going in through the nose.
Oh my god! I have to share the screen.
I know. I mean, I'm sure we've seen this paper before, and I get the feeling that yeah. I mean, supposedly Reza here is at CAMH, right? That's the same center that John's at. But I don't think he seemed to know him. Ironstone product development. So that also sounds like so two of the authors are at the company that makes the device.
Okay.
A third is at what sounds to me like maybe a contract engineering shop.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first author is at CAMH, but also works for the company. I don't know.
This is
I don't know.
this is that Reza article.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also looks like it's 12 subject and that it was mostly men and that they were older in age. So it looks like 61 to 74 years old for this study. So definitely a fairly targeted study going for a specific group and a specific age. So let me, in the most general sense, we're stimulating oxygenation and blood flow with these electrodes. Like, what's the premise behind? What do you get when you pulse an LED?
See, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, what they're saying here is here we administer. This is in the abstract, right?
Mm-hmm.
We administer the transcranial. The T is transcranial. Transcranial. The transcranial PBM in the form of near light, so 810 nanometer wavelength.
And they're going for default.
Pulsed at 40 hertz, but for the default mode network.
Well, I suspect that they have some way of mapping active network because people do.
Yeah, but again, like default mode network. I mean,
I know.
Certainly the kind of mapping that was originally used to bring out default mode network was fMRI, was resting fMRI, right?
Right.
And nobody was, that is not 40 hertz. 40 hertz is considered, very local activity, right? Default mode network is very, is widespread.
Sorry. I just want to mention something. The changes that they saw were alpha, beta, and gamma, which is interesting. Sure. And then the other device was talking about theta, gamma, and alpha. But yeah, so far I haven't seen anyone talk about delta. Well, I guess in this case it reduces the power of delta and theta in this study. But it sounds like they measured EEG changes when pulsing these electrodes.
But it's okay. So right in the intro, okay. It's first discovered in 1967. Really? Okay. Endra Mester observed low-powered laser treatment promoted hair regrowth. Oh, good. So there's hope for me.
Same here.
I don't believe. Yeah, and you might notice I still have that problem. Now this is interesting. I mean, the wound healing. I want to say I caught a really great talk from the Tarasky Institute down in Los Angeles, and this is kind of biomaterials, nanomaterials. But for biomedical applications, akin to the WISE Institute, right? And they were definitely demonstrating with nice cellular preps changes in cellular organization driven by both sound stimulation as well as electrical stimulation.
Wow.
And certainly the electrical stimulation would follow quite nicely, I think, with some of Michael Levin's work at Tufts. So who's really focused on regeneration. Not sure about photobiomodulation for wound healing, but we would need to go check. Okay, so let's see. So I'm just getting from PubMed that it's a Mester article. He's first author, and it looks like the Bulletin Society International Shear. So is that chemistry or on the biological effect of lasers? Oh, Bulletin de la Société Internationale de Chirurgie. Yeah, kind of a weird 1960s journal to be publishing this in. Second, radiobiological radiotherapy, the effect of laser beams on the growth of hair in mice. Again, not exactly what you want backing up your photobiomodulation, because then the next paper jumps to 2016,
Right,
and it is again, shining light on the head, photobiomodulation for brain disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, who's this? Okay, somebody at Mass General's got a lot of titles. Okay, so let's see if this person has backed up any claims with some references using the same Mester references. Okay. Yeah, same laser references from 1968. Oh, wait. No, there's a newer one, but Mester together with Mester together with Mester. So are you thinking brothers and sisters? That is 1985.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking kids. I'm thinking that's Mester and his kids.
Okay.
I'm just guessing here.
I've actually heard about research papers studied with like.
When Andre Mester from Hungary attempted to repeat an experiment recently published.
Can you give me the link of what you're looking at?
So I'm looking at this particular article here, which jumps to 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Somebody's. Yeah. Are you good, Alex?
Yes, shining light on the head.
Sorry. Alex in the chat said it lost our feed here. So this is somebody at I want to say the Martineau Center.
Mm-hmm.
So can I share my?
Yes, please. I'm not sure.
How do I?
Right above your there's an icon that lets you toggle mic, video, whatever.
Okay.
I think one of those should be like a laptop. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna try sharing. No, that's not. Sharing.
It's like right where it says toggle video to the mic.
Okay. And is it going to let me? Oh Lord. See, now you have to choose from like the 20 open windows that like Firefox windows I have.
You can pick just one display, I think near the bottom. It'll let you pick a monitor.
Let me see. Does it say the one in the? Oh yeah. Where?
For me, when I go to share screen, if I hit the drop down, all the way at the bottom, it says entire screen. And if I choose that one, it'll it'll share my active monitor.
Is that working?
I don't see it yet, but yeah, sorry, this is our first time trying Crowdcast with guest screen sharing. Thanks for bearing with us. It's a little fiddly.
Sorry. I will try that.
So there you go.
Is that working?
Yes, we've got it.
So
Beautiful.
does that work?
Yes.
Or is that nice and big?
Yeah, you zoomed in, we can read it.
Okay. So this is MGH, and then this particular joint group, Harvard MIT has an imaging center, which usually this. Well, I'm not sure what the Wellman Center for Photomedicine is. I've never actually heard of it before. Mm-hmm. So take that with a grain of salt. But here we get, I guess, a mechanism of action. Mm-hmm. So let's see. Light comes in. I mean, this is what I'm assuming is that here's the light coming in. Mm-hmm. Here's the light hitting the mitochondria. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what the paper said too. Stimulating
the mitochondria, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we know that that's involved in producing, ATP for the. Okay. The neurons. Well, I can't say there's a lot of chemistry here. Not a lot of it's telling a story that I can see, but and then there's this. All
right, and once again, we get to master and hair regrowth and wound healing in rats.
Well, we're told. It's always bad. The beneficial health effects of light therapy had been known for some time. What really? But was accidentally discovered in 1967.
Right.
Okay. So again, like the wound healing, definitely there's some new stuff in terms of regeneration and potentially wound healing that is driven by electrical stimulation, for sure. And I can find those papers later, but yeah.
By the way, Morgan, Nathan, I forget what lab Nathan works in, and by the way, that's a sign that I'm a terrible academic because you would have remembered right away which university he's with, but to me, these things blur together. Yeah. However, Nathan's been an awesome contributor. Talk to us about his manual sleep scoring. And in this case, it sounds like he's familiar. It's up to you if you'd like to join us for a minute and talk, or if you prefer to chat by text, whatever kind of works better for you this week.
Sure.
All right.
Sure. Please jump on. I'm in real time trying to decode this paper.
Beautiful.
And I mean, here's the paper, here's the reference that has Mester, and Mester. Mm-hmm. I'm going to assume that they're related, that is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And
hi, Nathan. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hiya.
Yeah, so I was interested. I turned this on and I was on the Nootropics Reddit a while ago when people were talking about building these that was how I found out about them. But yeah, sure. I think it, the idea is really like part of it is kind of like, that you're essentially, because the mitochondria absorbs energy at that frequency, you're actually adding energy to the cell in the same way that it would normally be making the energy from glucose, but with this specific wavelength of light is just another way to kind of add energy into that process. So one thing it does is it makes more ATP available to the cell. And the other thing that they think it does is it kind of stresses the cell a little bit. It seems to make more reactive oxygen species and free radicals, which are normally bad. They damage DNA. But the response to that is that the cell upregulates a lot of protective factors, and then they think that that also then has other benefits for the cell.
I see. So it's almost like this is bad for you, but your body responds in good ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So
like exercise. I mean, exercise also does that.
Right.
And I think there was one study that showed that kind of like when you did this on the brain, they got improvements in executive function, and exercise also gives you improvements on executive function. But if you do this and the exercise, they don't combine. Like maybe they're even the same mechanism.
Wow.
Hang on, I can post that.
Think I would have to go with, it's just the exercise at that point. But
this stimulation works independent of exercise. Like this helps and exercise also helps.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's just a little disappointing that Hamblin has not, in the intervening years, seen any follow-up outside of Mester on this. Everybody would be quite happy to see wound healing. Well, that's not true. Plenty of people would be happy to see hair regrowth. So I'm still not really convinced that.
But basically,
that does anything. Yeah.
Well, this $900 device seem to. Sorry, please.
Well, I was just going to say, like I think, a couple of years ago, if you'd said, oh, well, wound regrowth is aided by electrical stimulation, I would have been like, well, what's the mechanism? How's that possibly helping? And it's really been certainly a big contributor to that is all the really fine-grained cellular and simple system work that Michael Levin's done to demonstrate all of this, right? Together with nice simulation work too, which I still think we could benefit from, but these papers, well, it's easy equipment to build,
right?
So that's good because we can test it.
Yeah, that's really one of the things that I find interesting is like, okay, now Nathan, let me ask you, do you think this is safe?
Kind of.
That's what I want to hear.
So when they've done this on
Sorry, just go ahead.
When they've done this on non-brain tissues, one of the things that people kind of agree on is that you can overdose it. And I think the theory there is that you get so much cellular stress that the cells can no longer compensate and you start to get dysfunction. And I don't know, I think you can potentially do that to the brain. So far, all the studies that they've done in the brain that have been published show enhancement. I haven't seen any published studies of bad things happening from it, but I think you could hurt yourself.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'd be interested in measuring it in EEG because if we see frequency changes, I mean, that shouldn't be any different than like what we did with the spicy challenge. But the difference to me is I certainly don't believe that eating spicy food is gonna damage you in any way. Although I will say, one day I did 7.5 minutes of spicy food, and and I started realizing, my taste buds aren't really working the same way that they used to. So one thing I hadn't really considered is it's not normal to keep spicy food in your mouth for 7.5 minutes. But if you do, your taste buds downregulate because they don't want to send that signal for that long. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, am I going to taste food normally? I'd never, I'm sure it's going to recover. Don't get me wrong. But I do find it funny. And people who eat a lot of spicy food do report colloquially a reduced sensitivity to taste, from what I understand. So it is interesting that even in the mildest experiments, you have a little bit of a, when you're targeting something and you're stimulating it really explicitly, there's ways that just is different than what you encounter kind of like in the wild.
Alex, so you saying your friend was saying that they don't think it's safe, or?
Yeah, I guess Alex was saying that it sounds sketchy. Okay, so we're not going to do photobiostim as a Neurotech X project. But if anybody does either use one of these devices or participates in a research project that does one of these devices, let us know, because I'd love to know what the data looks like. But yeah, let's not mess up anyone's mitochondria.
Okay, this guy is a Brit. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the Wellman Institute.
George Lucas said.
Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Mm-hmm.
Great. Sorry. Wait. Whoop. So, okay. I mean, so the Wellman Institute is still around. Mm-hmm. That's good. And I think we need to get in touch with Hamblin.
I would love to, yeah. Maybe we can send him an email and see if we could get a...
I don't see Hamblin. Okay. So Hamblin might be emeritus at this point. Let me just... No. Is it Lane? No, these are not... Thought I might have recognized.
Yeah.
About technology development, endoscope. Yeah, I mean, again, like, it's not. I'm just giving you my sense of things, but it's just like, this doesn't seem to be a result that the Wellman Center is kind of standing behind or is showing off.
The one thing about photomodulation that I had heard about was using LEDs to clear plaque Alzheimer's. I think everybody heard about that study a few years ago.
And that was, I think at the Pickhour or the Wise Institute. Am I spelling this right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then
I believe
it was at MIT.
Like 40 hertz.
Or I don't know the term.
So this is
that's the one. That's the one.
Here we go. Mm-hmm. I mean, so this is like last year. Okay.
I thought it was older than that, but it's probably my recollection.
It definitely goes back.
Oh, this is the clinical trial. This is the clinical trial. Okay.
This is the author that's also on the temporal interference paper.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, hold on. Let me make a note of that.
Pretty big deal that she's also the Pickhour Professor of Neuroscience and the director of the center. Yeah. So this, I mean, again, like, here's a center that's kind of like standing behind a result for sure.
I think the interesting thing about that study is kind of they weren't doing this like infrared stimulation through the skull. They were actually just using regular lights that like people or mice saw. And it's just that because like the signals are going through your brain, it can Yeah,
I mean, like multiple mouse models, the light and sound stimulation technique called gamma entrainments using sensory stimuli.
And just to point out, lots of these devices are targeting gamma. And a while ago, gamma was sort of uninteresting because it was difficult to observe. And then lately, gamma is very interesting because it's involved in interesting functions.
Yeah, look, I mean, 40 hertz sound stimulation works in mice too. Super, super interesting, you know, because again, like for somebody, I just was not taught any kind of mechanism where, you know, any kind of sound produces a physiological change.
So yeah, that's
outside of the cells that are you know, transducing, right?
So that actually brings up a really interesting topic, and maybe I can do the poll later. But one of the things that I thought would be really, really cool, given the proliferation of focus and brain shifting apps that are meant to help you induce certain states, they're just exploding. Neurosity has their integration. We're talking Brain FM. We're talking Evoked Response is another company that does it. Anyway, I would love to see if we can measure some EEG changes from baseline based on music applied. And let me just, I was going to ask a poll on a couple of different things, but I would love to get a sense of what experiment people would like to do next. So I figure EEG measurements of different types of music would be a good one. If we want to combo modalities, sorry, please.
So, well, sorry, can I just pull up a...
You certainly can, Morgan.
So this is relevant to psychiatry. Just because... I mean, you'll see from the, sorry, let me, Stuffle Beam, I think is author. I'm trying to pull up this particular paper. Yeah, Vierling. Right. So here's a copy of the paper, and so this is so I've pointed to this paper as like I'm super excited. You got to scroll down a little bit from the way that they've made that PDF. I've pointed to this paper as why I think dynamic causal modeling is something that's useful.
Yes.
which is I've just been told on Twitter it is not by somebody whose opinion I value. But he's yet to actually follow up with some, you know, other than saying no, it's not giving me much. But the main thing about this paper is that the entire paper is really about auditory stimulation at 40 hertz.
Oh, wow.
Right? So am I changing? Well, and what's interesting is that in this particular paper, they've got a simulation that makes a prediction about the power spectra that you would observe in primary auditory cortex if you were doing an auditory click train at 40 or 30 hertz, right? Then they changed the model. They changed like parameter time constant of a particular cell type or a particular receptor type in the model, computational neuroscience model. And it's a pretty simple, it's very similar to a Janssen-Ritt model that is at the basis of dynamic causal modeling and SPM.
Right.
And turn the crank on the simulation and you get a a very different power spectrum. So that was their computational neuroscience result. And then they're like, okay, look, our simulations, we're doing physics. We're doing neurophysics. We're doing this simulation. We get this difference between, between groups on the basis of our simulations. And now we're going to collect MEG data, and we're going to record auditory signal with the same sound stimulation click train. And they say, oh, look, if we do source modeling, we get a different power spectra from primary auditory cortex. They've got MRI plus MEG on these subjects, and they want to say like, hey, look, we confirmed our computational neuroscience model. So this is good lead up. This is good lead up for our coming guests, in the sense that like this is great modeling work. And the last author here is Nancy Capel, who, if you were trained in neurobiology, like I was, although I was an awful student, you know her name from her work, and her really pioneering work in central pattern generator behavior and et cetera. Nonlinear dynamics.
Right.
So, I mean, like, I like her, we know where her work's coming from. But nobody had this result from, 2016, right? In terms of mice and their auditory stimulation. So would I wouldn't pick up on this, because I'm not looking for these effects that Genus is producing, right? Well, certainly after observing that gamma frequency, brainwave power, and synchrony is substantially weaker in Alzheimer's. So I don't know. I mean, certainly what's come when I keep pointing people at this paper, because I say, well, psychiatry makes no predictions, right? And so, at least this paper is making a prediction on the basis of a computational model, right? Which, hey, that's something. It's not an incredibly physiological prediction. It's really kind of a comp neuro prediction. But well, let's just leave it at that and say, I still want to follow up on this paper. And like, I've contacted the first author and the last author to say, hey, I'd really like to replicate this. Do you have any of your data and your model?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's been a while.
And I don't want to, and that is like, very common. And this is, this work would have been done like 2005, probably, it's getting published 2008. So maybe 2004, right? 2005, this is the actual work is being done. This is long before everybody was putting everything up on GitHub. But even more reason to replicate it, right? And I just will say one thing, is that at the computational neuroscience meeting pre-COVID, so 2019, I guess, which is where I met John for the first time.
Right.
At the, I think it was like Brain Oscillations meeting, that was actually hosted, or was put on by some UCSF people. So I forget what Raj calls his group. It's like the Brain Connectivity Lab or something. But he had a speaker from Amsterdam that was talking about Alzheimer's, MEG and Alzheimer's, and they were using a shift in your alpha peak as a leading indicator of dementia.
Right. And I think Dr. Wojtek's models at UCSD show that like these kinds of changes in the frequency spectrum are really clear. Yeah.
Cool. So that's like phenomenological, right? Doesn't really explain why, or like that's not giving us a model for,
maybe I'm weird on this, but like the why is definitely the domain of like publication. And I'm not, obviously you can't publish if you can't describe a mechanism, but like I think we can experiment with effects that we don't understand the mechanism, as long as we can observe consistently the pattern of emissions. Now, obviously if you can't explain what you think is happening, you won't be able to get a research article. But I do think that
No. I think you can get a research article. I just don't think you're going to get, I mean, I just like our goals is, I mean, we want to put these kinds of disease, this disease behavior,
right, into
a greater framework that has like, a mechanistic model, right? And so the particular, again, like I'm pushing this, this Vierling Klassen paper in particular, just because they've got a model, right? It makes a prediction, you get one set of results, you change something that like everybody can see what you've changed, although apparently you can't download the code. Right. but if we believe that it's just one change to this model and they rerun it and then they get this different result, you can see how like more important that is to have than just we get this this power change. And the power change was I mean, it was a power spectral. I mean, like FOOF would be perfect for this, because what they were really saying was that they were getting a power spectral shape change.
Right, exactly. The
like
parameters
it was power,
are different.
But it was like where you were kind of supposed to be seeing this like this delta, this like, I mean, delta function, like not delta frequency, but a nice spike at the stimulation frequency. That in the patient population, you were seeing this broad, flattened peak. So FOOF, I think, would be nice. He's okay. You're seeing that too.
Yeah, I'm waiting for NeuroTechSF to reconnect. So I think he's
okay. I think maybe his Wi-Fi.
About that.
Oh, there we go.
It's browser crash. Yeah. So I was just going to show an example of FOOF that we ran on the spicy data. So like this is the frequency spectrum, and in this case, you can see that the alpha peak is marked at 8.39 hertz. So if you did a stimulation and like let's try to find one where the data is different, we're going to use that as a proxy for the data changing. So here it's 8.68, and here it's 8.31 or 8.39. So let's assume this was the same channel and that we were measuring the before and after. So we say before we're at 8.39, we do some kind of stimulation. we go to 8.68 or something like that. With FOOF, you get the precise measurement of where that frequency peak is. You also get the power and the bandwidth, so you can compare them like to like.
So with the spicy challenge, what did the spicy challenge shift? Was it mostly a power change, or?
It was mostly a power change. Yeah, the frequency shifts were super subtle, and I can show you that because if I load, let's say this is the baseline, and then this is the spicy data I did right after. So obviously we'll have different fits, but yeah, like it doesn't really shift so much as it affects the shape. So like here you can see that in the non-spicy there's this like clear peak structure, but when I'm administering the spicy, it does seem to create this little double type peak on some of the channels, and this is definitely something I noticed. So there's less of a peak.
Yeah,
that's sort of the biggest frequency shift, but the biggest change was in the power.
At like 25 to 30 hertz. Huh.
Yeah, the beta, the gamma, those were the big shifts. And let me just see if I can find one of the comparison reports.
I just want to say that I think this is super interesting. Or I haven't done I haven't done any background on this.
Right.
I mean, you told me about this like a couple months ago, right? But let me pull up.
Yeah, I'll just finish showing the comparison, and then we can definitely. Sorry. No, it's cool. I just so this is the plots over time where we're just comparing the quantifications. Now, first thing I'll say, because we are actually looking at FOOF. FOOF has two major characteristics for the shape of your frequency spectrum. They model it with the offset and the exponent. So when you see the offset change, that means that the raw voltage, the absolute power changed. That's just really all it means. But when you see the exponent change, that does mean that the shape of the data changed. So normally I don't really go into the exponents because it's a little bit tough for people. But the first thing I'll say is that administering the spicy food changes the actual shape of your frequency spectrum. So the exponent changes, which is, it's not unusual for the exponent to change, but when you see it in relation to a stimulus, that tells you that the stimulus is affecting it. The way it affects it on the channel changes and on the day because the exponent's a little bit variable, but we do see a characteristic that goes in on the frequency spectrum. Now, what do we actually see? So here's the baseline delta powers where we kind of sum up the band, and you'll see that as soon as the spicy food gets administered, it kind of starts this excursion from the baseline level into kind of like an initial peak, and then there's a rebound, and then there's a recovery peak, and then it sort of seems to go to some elevated baseline. But what's cool about this is I'm not removing the spicy food. I've just got it the entire time. In terms of the channels, we did see a delta response. We do see a theta response. This is for me, so not everybody has the same responses. We do not see an alpha response. I never get an alpha response when it comes to the spicy food, so it's equivalent to baseline. But the strongest responses that I generate are in the beta band. So that's kind of like a quadrupling of power in the span of like a minute. And so you're going from 20 microvolts in those bins to 80. This is with a crown device, so it's relatively sensitive. But the gamma was also really, really clear because we're going from kind of 5 to 40. So this is an 8-fold increase in power. And the beta gamma ones were really, really clear over time. And finally, I'll just show you some of the, sorry for the inception, but I'll show you, I have a couple of stacked aggregate plots. And it just takes me a moment to find TX presentation. Cool, here we go. And
So I just wanted to, potentially we're going to get guests in like 15 minutes.
Okay, great.
And I was just wondering if we could switch to, or I wanted to see if we could do a little background for people in terms of the different techniques that are going to be offered. So, like diffusion drift models are one thing.
Okay.
And, have you covered those, or are you using diffusion drift models for reaction time modeling?
We're not, and that's an excellent segue. So, Nathan, first thing I just want to.
Yeah.
You're welcome to be up here with us. You're also welcome to hop off. Sometimes people feel like
Yeah, you
they're
can
not.
hop off. Yeah.
No, but it's up to you. Actually, you're welcome to stay on. What I'm saying is, I don't want you to feel trapped that because you joined, you have, but vice versa, you don't have to leave. Whatever.
Yeah.
I do have a thing in a bit, but I'll stay on.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Morgan, please. Okay, so there's. Let me just set this up for 1 second. There is an amazing course that's being offered. By the Winter School on Cognitive Modeling. And it's the Indian Institute of Technology, Nandi. Now, the first thing I'll say is because I'm a stubborn person, when I see a site like this and I see that it costs money, I'm like, oh no, this is going to be $2,000. But no, if you do the currency conversion, the most expensive option on this is $35. So I'm not trying to say that like it's not, but trust me, I was expecting, California prices, which would be very rough. So the only thing I'll say is, this is a very reasonable course. Now, Morgan, why don't you tell us about what they cover?
Sure. Well, just on prices, because I dropped a link about a month ago on a clinical physiology of TMS, physiology of clinical TMS. I forget what the ordering is there. And I regretted it because when I then checked, it was like $1,500 or something. And I've been seeing a lot. So I'm definitely going to try and reach out to the brain stimulation lab at Stanford to come and talk about all the press that they're getting.
Oh, I would love that.
About a rapid TMS stimulation in a randomized control trial that is demonstrating a remarkable efficacy, right? I mean, in terms of people self-reporting at various time periods. Like I'm not sure when this was started, but it was started long enough that they are saying that maybe people need to come in at some point. But again, that they've changed. Yeah. Thank you. They've changed, this has gone from I think what was a 40 minute protocol to a 3-minute protocol.
Wow.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And a big part of why, and remember, this is a pain in the ass because they're doing a MR localized stimulation, right? So what 37 minutes probably meant was that your head was in a vice.
Oh no!
You'd want
the strap.
You'd basically want to be strapped down, or even better, it would honestly. What you should probably do is just lie the person down on a bed, give them a pillow, and then just place the coil. Get the coil in place, and kind of do like the old MEG, the old 30 channel MEG thing that they would just come and move and put right on top of you. Because again, it was it wasn't whole head, so you needed to be still, right? So being still for 3 minutes, much easier than being still for 40.
Yeah, I can tolerate that in an MRI, but not
right. And they're doing this with a week of these, really short but super rapid bursts. So they're just hammering some location. Now again, let's remember how TMS works, right? This is very, very far from being rocket science. This is a coil, right? And you're putting a lot of current through it. And so it's
Can I ask like a super layman question? I think we have like an awesome mixed audience, and one of the things is the concept of what does the brain react to stimulation wise and what doesn't it. So I think with magnets, it kind of confuses people because when you go in an MRI, the whole point is supposedly it's not affecting your brain, right? It's not like an X-ray where you're getting, a whole
static field.
Yeah, exactly, right. So one thing that I think is always confusing to people is like, if magnets don't affect your brain, kind of, how come magnetic stimulation, or what is it doing? Is it affecting the iron in your cells? I'm sorry for such, basic questions, but when you stimulate your brain with a magnet, what are you actually doing to your brain with that magnetic field?
Well, I mean, I guess it's important to say, or I don't know what's easier is to explain like why MRI is working. I mean, MRI doesn't have anything to do with magnets.
Sure.
That's not true. But MRI is a quantum effect.
Okay.
That the mass action of which is affected by the static magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the nuclear magnetic resonance, like the MRI itself is at like megahertz. The radio waves are at very high frequency, right? Because that's the real mechanism.
Mm-hmm. So like, okay, when I'm doing electricity,
the current in the coil, right,
mm-hmm.
is then generating this complementary magnetic flux, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's in that's what can travel through your skull,
mm-hmm.
with no impedance, and then that is so it's like the current flow is the real change, right? The current flow in the coil.
With TACS, you're putting it between two points, like a thing, like a front and back, or I'm sorry, TDCS.
That is, yeah. But in this case, mm-hmm. you're putting a hell of a lot more, right? So I think it's important to see, why does a TMS device cost $50,000? Right.
So I tried to build one, and they're really hard to build.
They are hard to build, and so MagStim has. Sorry.
We have someone, Alex, who's with us, might still be here, is actually using TMS in his lab. So
cool.
that would be another cool. But yeah, we've got all this stuff to talk about. We have 10 minutes. Sorry, Morgan, you go right ahead.
Well, so no, that's cool, and the I'm blanking on his name, but there's an engineer that that built the first TMS, and he's done a video recently for one of the companies, and I want to say it was MagStim, but maybe not, because there's definitely some new companies out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to focus on MagStim just because they bought a company that I used to work at, Electrical Geodesics. So who knows? Maybe we could get some support. And it's so super interesting because they had a press release today, or maybe on the 2nd, I think, that I want to say it's called like Horizon 300 system just got FDA approval. Mm-hmm. And the big, I am sure that it costs, $100K plus. Let me pull up a picture just because I want people to know what would be coming at this price. So hopefully this is on. We might have to search Business Wire. MagStim. How about FDA approval?
Yeah, I googled MagStim Horizon 300.
And it did you?
Say awarded. Yeah, I've got a link here.
Yeah. So sure. Yeah, Yahoo Finance. It's always great to see Yahoo is still alive in some form. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, you got it on Business Wire. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at this thing. Oh my goodness, it looks like a dentist chair.
Right. It's pretty. They've got a video. And okay, so if you see the Polaris that's there. So the stereo camera that's there.
Oh, this
is used in neurosurgery. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that we're typically using to get positioning. You've got these like little reflective balls on various devices that allow the stereo camera to figure out distance and position and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. You do some calibrations and you can.
Yeah, those are the three little dots maybe on the back of this device.
Something
like that.
Perhaps usually they're going to be on the. Yeah. I mean, they must be on that. Sorry, I can't see that too well.
Oh, sure.
But anyway, like that camera itself is going to be, $20K, right? Mm-hmm. I think you could make a case that you could replace that potentially with a consumer level device. So I've got some of those, OpenCV just did a Kickstarter for some stereo cameras, mm-hmm. Like little small ones. But anyway, so we can talk about like how you could potentially, replace that with something that's a little more in a consumer price point. But this video that the engineer that built the first TMS like back in the 70s, I think, is really funny because I think he talks about some of the hardware that he had to blow up or destroy, or like he talks about what went wrong first. In the Apex Lab. Oh, that's cool. Okay. But yeah, sorry, Alex, you're doing TMS?
Alex,
I'll check.
I'm not related.
Okay, and then also, of course,
I'm not related to the Huff transform.
I think of you every time I'm doing a Huff transform. I want you to know that I'm doing a Morgan transform. All right.
I thought maybe I could lean into it and be like, well, maybe it's a distant relative, but no.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I know Huff. We used to talk about his algorithm a lot.
It is good. It does mean something if it's pronounced the same way, as long as it's not the Hogue transform. Right. If people called it the Hogue transform or something, that'd be like definitely different family.
Right.
But anyway, we got to find that video. I'm still, and we've got to get the Saint study people to come and talk about this. I mean, it's super exciting, but we have a real problem explaining why this works, right? And I have a real problem with somebody saying that they're going to commercialize the stimulation, because let's be clear, the hardware is kind of hard to build, but once you have the hardware, it's how you're turning the current on and off. Right. But that is not really the same complexity of the MRI MRI sequence of gradients and RF.
Right.
That's like one of my issues with a lot of consumer brain stimulation things is they'll like put some electrodes like somewhere on the head and they'll be like, that's doing what this shows in this study. I'm like, I mean, it probably does something to your brain.
Well, so again, like why SimNibs is so important is that SimNibs will show you that you can move those electrodes around, but because of the way that the current is going to flow, like you're basically exciting half the brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just undervalued. I think it's just undervalued in the industry too. Like I think like some of these like just I don't know. Like when I see some companies, I'm just like they either don't understand how important it is to do that in a rational way, to like design that in a rational way, or they just don't really care.
Well, the main thing is I think most of them just don't care. And most of them are also selling it for off-label use that is just strikes me as snake oil.
Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, the screen just disappeared. I clicked accept and it just like blacked out.
It's glitchy tonight. Thanks for joining. But yeah, if you just want to tell us a little bit about the TMS work you do, and if you have a hypothesis on what it's doing to stimulate people, and it's okay, we all disagree on the mechanism. I'd like to hear yours as well.
Well, I was talking about TDCS earlier, which is like not as fancy as TMS, and kind of more accessible. So like I said, I was working with like embodied cognition and like using TDCS to stimulate the motor cortex to like enhance comprehension of like motor metaphors, such as like she grasped the idea. Grasping is like understanding here, but it's like a motor movement. So in those TDCS studies, we did happen to like get faster reaction times to those motor metaphors after 20 minutes of stimulation. But like more research is needed. TMS, we're just being able to get back into the labs now. So now I can finally get back to like getting into research with TMS. And I was at the University of Illinois at Chicago earlier. Now I'm at the University of Chicago because they're just better for research. So we have access to TMS devices. So now I'm trying to see like what I can do with like TMS for like, I don't know, some kind of motor movements. And like maybe learning of some kind of motor skills, but I'm still like looking through reviewing the literature and whatnot. So I don't have any hypotheses right now, but like with TMS and like stimulation, it is like excitatory, inhibitory. It just excites neurons, inhibits them, stuff like that. You read that everywhere.
Right.
Do you have any papers either from yourself or from your lab that kind of go over motor metaphors or any of the kind of like big lab concepts that you guys are working on?
So we were supposed to. So I was at USC. I was trying to publish this paper that was on like the motor metaphors in TDCS, but like literally coronavirus hit. Like I had 100 participants collected. I was like in the middle of collecting data. Coronavirus hit. Like everything shut down, and all the other researchers were just like, I'm out. Like so, I just switched institutions, lost access to the data, and we're just like,
well, the University of Illinois Chicago has one of my favorite magnets. So it was, it was one of the first sites to try and build a 9 Tesla MRI.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure what. Okay, so Akash might be on.
Yes, yes, and I think we have.
Did he join or
no? We don't.
Let me just see. So they're waking up in India. This is their absolute morning. Okay, and
yes,
okay, yeah. Okay, so well, let's just switch. I mean, do you both are you fully caffeinated or are you ready for us to switch you, to add you to the speakers?
Yeah, so what we're going to have to do, because crowd has a limitation of 4 speakers. So, so our 2 volunteers are going to have to get a battlefield demotion. I'm sorry about that.
We'll talk more, Alex.
Yes,
okay?
yes, thank you so much. Okay, so let's invite Akash and Anmol and Morgan. I will let you introduce them and take it away. And all that
sure. I'm hoping that they're going to introduce themselves. I can remember. Yeah, so Akash Rao, I know, is at IIT Mandi. So you'll both get a message to accept, and that will unfortunately bring you onto the screen. There you are. Well, there's Anmol, okay, and Akash, okay.
Hi.
So, hi. So, Anmol, if you don't mind introducing yourself first. And I know you're at IIT Roorkee. Is that correct? Oh, okay.
I think he has an issue at his end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Anmol, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. My headphone just stopped working earlier. So yeah.
No problem.
Hi. Great to meet you guys. So I am Anmol, and I am currently a PhD student at IIT Roorkee, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. And basically, my area of research includes cognitive computational neuroscience and machine learning. So my background is basically from computer science, and yeah. So this is kind of a multidisciplinary and new field for me.
Oh, yeah. And also, happy Diwali.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I should have led with that. Super to have you. And Akash, now you're at IIT Mandi.
Yeah, I'm a PhD scholar at IIT Mandi. I also completed my MS by research here as well, and so my area of research is integrating virtual reality and transcranial direct current stimulation for cognitive performance enhancement. So we have just taken up that project from the Life Sciences Research Board here in India. It's from a Defense Research and Development Organization.
Okay.
So exciting times ahead.
That's super cool. I really want to talk about the virtual school, the upcoming virtual school, because I want as many people as possible to apply for that. So can you, Anmol, this has been run before at IIT Roorkee, right?
Not really. It was introduced at IIT Mandi only, and but we have been a part of it from the very beginning.
So there was a program last year, and maybe this is separate, but that reminded me of this. I mean, there was diffusion drift models, ACTAR.
Yeah.
It's
been going on. Yeah, it's been going on from the last 3 years, I suppose.
Okay.
And
yeah. So it's the same organizers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same organizers.
Yeah. Because I sent email last year, and I think they tried to do it in person, maybe, or
we had tried that. So initially it was to be held in February 2020. So we had kept. I mean, the plan was that it was going to be a physical winter school where everyone would come on campus and
gotcha.
The traditional way, yeah. But that is just when COVID-19 became something very serious in India. So everyone started panicking, and 2 of our speakers who are in the Netherlands, so they were told that if they went to India, they would probably not come back for a long time. So
they didn't jump on a plane, but it was I'd sent email because there was a group in the States that involved Princeton and University of Texas Austin, and anyway, it was really interesting because, or it was interesting timing, just because that particular group was also kind of like coordinating. I mean, they were looking for lots of different cognitive modeling frameworks, right? And trying to, to some degree, like unify, certainly come together and look at the kind of like, what are the common back-end numerical methods that are being used here? And so when I saw the, I guess at the time it was the second virtual school, or the second cognitive modeling school, again, like was super impressed by the all the different techniques that were being included, because again, like not a lot of groups do, EEG, fMRI, cognitive modeling of the ACTAR kind of sorts, and like the, diffusion drift, like Monte Carlo probabilistic, event modeling, right? And so, Anmol, can you say anything like what, like who's kind of guiding, bringing all that together? And is that the kind of data that's being collected by some groups at Roorkee, or originally?
So okay, so let me tell you about my other PhD as well. So I am currently right now pursuing double PhD, in fact. So
Okay.
and the other is at University of Groningen. So
Okay.
while like I am under Dr. Marike von Works, if you know her, like she was kind of the guide here, like who started this, like not started this, but yeah, she has been with us from the very start, and like like so basically uh, so her was she was there. She visited India, and she is like connected to both our schools, like IIT Mandi and IIT Roorkee both. And so we kind of started as and she used to work with EEG as well as cognitive modeling at TAR, both of them. And that's where like I came into the picture, and we had a chat, and then she offered like we wrote a project together in India, and we got a grant for that. And the project basically includes studying
Yeah.
depression mechanisms.
The
Yeah,
middle
the
one,
second one.
Alex.
Yeah, the middle one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
If
from
you could
University of Groningen.
click
Yeah,
on there.
yeah,
Okay.
her
So
profile.
super interesting. Because I'm looking at the same. I love I love that she's at the Bernoulli Institute.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Uh, that's the name
that's a
of the
great name.
group, basically. Yeah, that's the name of the group. The building name is also same. Uh, so
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome. I
where
mean,
where our lab is.
at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm pretty familiar with most people who do EEG modeling, and I'm not familiar, but I think that might just mean that she writes her own code for it. Um,
Uh, kind
oh,
of
okay,
like it's in a very different application kind of a thing where she studies meditation as well, and yeah, so collect data while people are meditating. In fact, I just read like past like 3 months before only, like we collected data, EEG data of meditation,
sure,
where like we want
sure.
to predict like internal states of attention while a person is meditating.
So,
So.
I want to bring in, or Alex, if you don't mind,
Not yet. It's not public. Sorry.
there's
Somebody asked me.
there's a Stanford guy who spoke at Brainspace Initiative, and we'll pull up. I mean, I'll pull up. I can find him later, but it's interesting because the original reason I got in touch with him is that he had his PhD work, which was down in Texas, was focused on mindfulness meditation. Yeah, if you and his particular his computational neuroscience model included the reticular formation, which is like rarely in anybody's model.
Right.
But he's currently doing topological data analysis. So, which is, is really nice. He makes a Python package available for this. And like, if that's not a part of the virtual school, it definitely could be another great, another great addition to it. One, that he's like looking at mindfulness, and then two, because this is a really hot data analysis technique to look at topological data analysis. There's a package from Princeton. I'll find the package from Princeton and then the package from this guy. But so Marike, or how does she pronounce her name?
Marike. Yeah.
Van Vogt.
Yeah, so Marike is there, and then an integral part would be, I guess, Professor Varundar, and because he started it for the very first time. So can you please?
The left knee.
Yeah, the right nostril.
Okay.
Yeah. So he also does he does many kind of work basically, but he's an expert in cognitive modeling as well. And maybe Akash Shah is actually his student, so he might be better introduced.
And when you say cognitive modeling, are you meaning more of the kind of ACTAR?
And so if you look
more
into
ACTAR, more into behavioral modeling than EEG fMRI based modeling.
Right.
So when we introduced the winter school, we had basically concentrated upon behavioral modeling, ACTAR, instance-based learning, and also included Nengo and the drift diffusion models that Professor Marike taught. But this time, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, super interesting because, ACTAR, for those who aren't familiar, has a really long history in, like cognitive science in general, right? But definitely also in kind of like, would it be right to say kind of almost like user interface science? In the sense that like, because computers were kind of a part of testing it. I don't know if that's true. But definitely ACTAR goes back to the 90s.
Yeah. I think mid 80s.
Mid 80s. So it goes back away. Whereas Nengo is a much more recent.
It's a much more recent.
2000 plus. Kind of, and there, even though it's not explicitly a brain model, it's definitely a neural network. Or like it's really coming from neural network tradition, as opposed to.
I'm sure Professor Terry would. Terence C. Stewart is also a speaker in the winter school. He would argue that it is going to be a brain model eventually, but it is definitely a neural network based model. It caters to both spiking and non-spiking neurons as well.
I don't know if you've enjoyed the Brain Inspired podcast, but it's definitely worth checking out because he gets as guests, the lead developers for things like Nengo and other kind of like whole brain simulators, and then occasionally has them ask questions of each other, which is great too. But look, you can see, some of those speakers at Brain Inspired. right? You know, I mean, NLSeth obviously talking about consciousness, but you know, John Krakauer is been doing the learning salon with a number of people. Yeah, if you keep going there, well, Kevin Mitchell, there's it's great. Unfortunately, I've been out of it for a bit, so you're gonna have to go back to like almost last year. Well, so Randy, yeah. There's a guy at UC Davis that makes another. No, not that Randall. Sorry. Anyway, you know, Nengo has. There's some great intro videos that cover. You know, I think he did a 3-part intro for NeuroNexus, which is a somewhat NeuroTechX affiliated group out of Alberta.
Okay.
That was you know, I thought really nice you know, intro for those who aren't familiar with it. Can I ask, who you have someone talking about fMRI modeling? Yes, the first person there on the left.
Yeah. This is for the first time. I mean, out of the 3 editions that we are introducing fMRI and neurocognitive modeling. I mean, fusing fMRI and neurocognitive modeling. So his name is Percy Kushru Mistry. He completed his PhD from University of Irvine, UC Irvine. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, UC Irvine, and right now he's in Stanford.
Sure.
So he's doing some good work, and we thought that this could be an exciting addition this year. I mean,
absolutely. I'm just wondering. So is he going to be presenting with using a particular analysis package? I mean, is that going to be demonstrating like SPM or FSL, or is it going to be kind of like a more you know, a more behind the scenes, you know, demonstration of you know, the kinds of models that people use as opposed to actual data analysis?
Well, we are not very sure because he hasn't really given his talks till now. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't given the topics of his talk. But
I'm in his time zone. So let me see if I can bug him
of course.
and to come and talk about it. It's you know, it's my grad school experience of fMRI modeling, so I'm just curious like what you would cover, because you know, there are model based ways to do fMRI analysis, and then there are kind of like model free ways to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you know, this course in particular would be a good opportunity to look at some of the really interesting model-based ways to look at it. You know, so yeah, I'll just I mean, how about okay, so she's going to do the diffusion drift models.
Yeah.
And have you seen that before? Do you know what software she maybe uses for that? Because where she is in the Netherlands, she might be using something like JAGS.
Well, I think the last time it was, if correct me if I'm wrong, Anmol, I believe she used a version of RStudio, right?
Sure.
And they had.
Yeah.
So if she's using R, she still might be using JAGS behind the scenes.
Yeah, might be.
With R, you could be literally using anything behind the scenes, right? You could be wrapping anything. But I'm curious, and I would say that just because this developer went on to give us Pi MC3, I just point out the I think it's called HMM. Shoot, now I'm
HTDM, I believe. think it's called HTDM.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. You're right. Yes. Yeah, and if I say Python, yes, HTDM, right?
Yeah,
Which of course makes a
hierarchical
lot of
Bayesian
sense.
estimation, etc.
Yeah,
using
yeah,
HTDM.
yeah.
Yeah.
And here I'll drop it. Oops. And sorry, I added a. Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, but just because not everybody is using R. Although it was the first language that I had to learn in mathematical stats. Well, actually, I was learning S, which just tells you how old I am.
Okay.
Sorry, did I get an ooh? But what's cool is that Thomas Wiki here is it's kind of leading. I mean, he's not anymore, but definitely leads the development of PyMC4 at this point. Although I think they just changed what they were going to focus on for the back end because. Yeah. Anyway, are MC models in general a big part of the school?
Well, I mean, she did give an introduction into MC models. So, see, the intention behind conducting this winter school is trying to get students in, especially in India, where cognitive science is still, coming up and cognitive modeling is still coming up, to give them an introduction so that they are motivated to take this up. So, you asked what would be the end goal, right? So, Anmol is actually a very good product out of, how the winter school led to future collaborations. So he has been I mean, of course, he was at Rootkey, but as a result of the winter school, he has been associated with me as well as my guide for the last 2 to 3 years, and we have been. I mean, he has been doing outstanding work. One of his recent papers, he had actually compared an instance-based learning model, which is, which is a model in which my guide is a pioneer in. So he had compared the efficacy of instance-based learning models along with the DQNs on a. Anmol, can you explain?
Yeah. So basically, we were trying to do reinforcement learning with the cognitive model bit. So, IEBL, instance-based learning, is a particular type of cognitive model where they are focused on reinforcement learning itself, like how humans actually learn. So, at the back end of it is ACTAR only. So basically, the comparison was between the traditional methods, which is basically Q-learning, right? So statistical modeling versus cognitive modeling. That's what we did. And but we started with, and we wanted to use a very general task. So basically, you guys might have heard of OpenAI, right, in reinforcement learning. So we just used their OpenAI gem for reinforcement learning and started with a very the simplest possible thing, which is a frozen lake environment. So what we try to do is basically use PyIBL, use the cognitive model along with that OpenAI gem and frozen lake environment, and do reinforcement learning there, and show that it can basically compete very well with Q learning. And we basically developed our uh, two new metrics as well to basically measure generalization capabilities of the model in a better way. Like, we trained it on a particular environment and then tested it on a permuted version of it. So usually in machine learning, what you do, you just train it and test it on the same thing, on the same environment again. But we permuted the environment and then changes different parameters of the environment, like changing the reward of the environment, and then tested both the models. And turned out that the cognitive model basically works a tad better in generalization. So
So
yeah.
I mean that Yeah, again, it sounds like I don't want to say, well, to some degree, like reinforcement learning is based on the, supervised data stream that you've got. And here you're giving it some additional model, some additional weights, maybe.
So no, basically what happens is that reinforcement learning is based on a Markov decision process, right?
Okay.
Where what you are basically doing is you are basically representing the environment in a certain way. For example, if I'm talking about the frozen lake environment, is just a grid of 4 by 4 or 8 by 8 cells, right? And some of the cells are frozen while some of them are not. So if you walk into a non-frozen cell, you fall into it and die. And all of this is probabilistic. Like you choose some actions, you choose whether to go left, right, up, or down. And if you choose left, with some probability that the taken action will be left, right? So, but with some probability, you can even end up going right, even if you choose left. So all of this is probabilistic modeling kind of a thing. Now, with this probabilistic modeling, with this representation of the environment, what you are trying to do is you are trying to teach an agent which actions are the best to choose from a particular place in order to go to the goal. So this is how the representation is. So what statistical learning does or statistical modeling do is basically uh, calculate the expected reward out of all these interactions, right? So this expected reward is basically depends on the formulation of the mathematical formulation of it, where you have a whole formula for this expected reward, and which is known as the Q value. Now
Yeah, I was
this
going to
is
say this
yeah,
sounds like a policy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a policy. It's a
Okay.
policy. So what you do in reinforcement learning is you learn that policy,
Yeah.
right? Now the
So,
problem comes that the policy problem is that once you frame a policy, once the agent learns a policy for a particular environment, it's really difficult to translate that same strategy into a different environment,
okay. Okay.
right? Yeah,
So how does the cognitive model come
yeah,
in
yeah,
to,
yeah. I was
I
coming to
guess,
that.
is this going to improve the transfer learning performance?
The transfer learning performance. So the very basic difference between the two statistical modeling versus the cognitive modeling is the use of memory, the main difference. So how does the memory works in cognitive model or in ACTAR is basically whenever you encounter a new situation in the environment, or whenever you encounter a situation rather in the environment, you first try to recognize that by your visual module, just like the brain does basically, and you try to recognize that and you try to match that with whatever is there in your memory, just like a human does, human do, and yeah, yeah.
Well, and I can already imagine how a Nango person would change their overall system to include some sort of memory,
Yeah,
which would have a different architecture, but would
different. Yeah, yeah,
produce a hopefully improved performance when putting that
yeah,
agent in a
yeah,
new
yeah.
environment.
So basically, if you look at the recent advances in deep reinforcement learning, they are trying to replicate different forms of human memory. For example, episodic memory is a very general thing now in reinforcement learning models as well. Like I'm talking about deep reinforcement learning models. So they are trying to simulate that, but the way of their simulation is very how do I say that? Like in a very computer science way. Like for a memory, you just put a hash map or a hash table there, right? So while ACTAR on the other end works in a very cognitive way, like how human works. Like all the power law of memory follows the power law of memory and store chunks there, and then retrieves that chunk based on the similarity of the situation and the representation of the environment. So yeah, that's the main difference basically
Right.
between the
Right.
two, I would suppose.
Right. And so, and then Pi are, yeah. Do we have a link for that? And
Yeah. Can you show that?
I mean, I'm super interested to. I mean, as you can, you know, it's certainly one of my.
Yes,
You
you
can
did.
share if you like. Yeah.
I like getting to see, you know, the software, getting to see, you know, especially like how much of the software is sharing, you know, is it sharing a back end? Is it sharing a library dependency of the back end that's essentially the same, or you know, like Nengo I know is different, right? Like I know they're doing their own thing, but it sounds like you've really got a set of speakers.
PyIBL is basically Ektar itself. Ektar.
Oh, it's Actar. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Ektar.
So the instance based is what you would call Actar. Now,
no. So Ektar is not like totally instance based. I would say instance based learning is one of the like formulation of the problem in such a way, and it uses Ektar in the backend. So.
Okay, so Actar can be seen as a backend computational library.
Yeah, computation library, and basically, so what you are doing in instance-based learning is you are building upon the software constructs which are already there in Ekta. So, for example,
Are those going to be like probability distributions? I mean,
so there are different modules in Ekta, right? There is a visual module, there is a sensor module, and then there is memory module. So there are different modules. Now, when you go into the memory module, then there is basically a graphical representation of this memory. And so there comes in a bit of probabilistic modeling for storing that memory and retrieving that memory whenever you encounter a similar instance in the environment, right? So when you retrieve that, it is probabilistic in nature. So as far as I can tell, I guess maybe that might be the only probabilistic thing there. Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, it's more like a interface for different things.
Well, I mean, so it's funny that you'd say this. I mean, it shouldn't surprise me at all, right? It's like these were computational cognitive people in the going back to the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And eventually they would have had to write their own stuff. Right, and so it's probably built up all these numerical capabilities that you know, because again, like like SciPy, NumPy didn't exist yet, you know. Like, right?
No, so Ektar started with Lisp, if you know.
Right. Oh, is it Lisp?
Yeah. So
John Anderson was the one who started.
Yeah, John Anderson was the one. Yeah,
he started with Lisp.
It was Lisp, and even now the main version is Lisp. So a Python version is kind of the secondary version for that.
I don't know if you played with DeepMind's Lab when Lab came out. So you know, so this was probably like I think 2018, 2017, maybe. You know, it looks like Doom, you know, like it looks like Quake, right? But you do all the construction in Lua, right?
In Lua, yeah.
You know, it's Lisp-ish, right? Sorry. So Alex is saying, "Oh, thanks, Akash, for the link there." Oh, and it's from ddmlab.com.
Yeah, it's Dynamic Decision Making Lab, so it's from CMU.
But this is all open source, yeah.
Yeah, it's all open source.
Yes, yes, it is.
Oh, so this is old. I mean, so is this like old school Carnegie Mellon stuff?
Yeah, it's
I
Mhm.
old
mean,
school.
it does
It's a
it,
bit.
it's got a big long history. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it looks like it. Oh, you're even supposed to. Yeah. Okay, so that's a 2003 paper. It's based on. Okay, I love it. Anything that brings Lisp. There's 4 languages that you got to learn, right? So it's C, apparently,
Yeah.
and you got Python. Lisp is one of them. All right, this is from Eric Raymond's. Is it Hacker Handbook, or I forget. What's the 4th? Okay, I'm going to look it up.
Something like Haskell or something, maybe.
I'm going to be really depressed if it's C++. Oh yeah, How to Become a Hacker was the document, wasn't it? Oh, does he say Perl? Oh God,
But
he does. He says.
I think Perl is officially deprecated.
I think we can say that there are now 3 only.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and we might call it C++. But I think he, and at this point, well, I think the only question is at this point is whether Haskell replaces Lisp or.
So I'm just following up something Alex is saying in chat, but just a small
Good.
aside. But yeah, like when we've explored neural networks, deep neural networks, pretty extensively. We've also done convolutional networks. So we've explored pupil data. That works really well in convolutional networks because it doesn't need any transformations. Just a 1D time series, super easy, right? High reliability, quick training, no problem. And then for EEG, you got to do the elaborate architectures. But we've also done some visual processing. And on the visual processing side, the fact that there is not a frame-to-frame memory is the most frustrating thing of any of these things that you're doing. So you're processing a video, you feed it 50 frames on frame 45 and 46. They're 99% identical, and it's going to come up with completely different classifications because it doesn't remember that last frame it said that was a ball. Now it says it's a dog. Next frame, it's back to a ball. Next frame, it's back to a dog. And there's no recollection. So I know people were doing LSTMs to try to include some kind of memory component. I think OpenAI went that route as well. But yes, without memory, these AIs don't. I don't know. They're very limited in their performance, and the fact that you don't get consistent results from one to the other was a major problem.
Exactly. And the main thing, transfer learning doesn't really happen without memory, right?
Right.
It's very inefficient as well, in my view. Like as humans, like we learn, we store it in a memory, and whenever a new situation arises, like we are dependent on our memory most of the time, just to initially do that. So for transfer learning, we certainly need some form of storage as well to make a basically a AGI, you would say.
Yeah, exactly. Without it, we're not going to get AGI. We have simple pattern matching for now. Without memory, it's just pattern matching.
Yeah. And ACT are actually born out of this AGI thing.
Right.
Like if you see into this, like go into the background of ACT, I guess it was Alan Newell who first introduced all this, and then John Anderson took it up like in form of ACT, and that's how like they tried to do something.
By the way,
in terms
I'd like to add one more thing.
Yeah.
Alan Newell, so he has his own version of a cognitive architecture called SOAR. Yeah, it's at University of Michigan. I think the whole group is based at University of Michigan, and they also have a summer school based on the paraphernalia surrounding SOAR. So yeah.
Well, so I mean, I think I could be wrong here, But I think that that's what's driving this Princeton, UT Austin, like Europe, Asia, grand group
Coalition.
that they are trying to pull together all the old I don't know if you want to call these like symbolic math, like
symbolic,
right?
yeah.
So I mean, this is I mean, this is awesome, right? This is getting at these same Montreal.ai debates, right? And Actar, SOAR, there's definitely another connectionist one.
There's Clarion.
I think from which one?
That's Clarion, I believe. That's a connection.
Maybe. I mean, like, write all these down. I think there's one from like Colorado.
I'm just gonna make one brief. Crowdcast keeps the chat. It keeps the videos. So anytime we want to go back and look at the chat log, we've got the whole thing and the events. Sorry.
And you let us know when you guys have to go for, like starting your day. We really appreciate having you in your morning. So I mean, I think there has been, because of the long AI winter, right? There's like these small groups that kept a particular software stack alive, and I think at this point, together with some work on kind of like meta languages, because I know that Jonathan Cohen at Princeton was definitely one of the people involved in this, and he was looking at Rascal, which is like a meta programming. So it's like, sorry, let me find this. Yeah, so these are for like domain specific languages. I'll drop this in here. I mean, I think people want to like separate the numerical libs, right? Which like rightfully should be separate from like what is the model? What's the model bringing, to the table? Like, and then essentially get some way to allow modelers the flexibility, right? But then still keep it so that like models can be compared easily. And, I don't want to say like everything's going to get re-implemented, but maybe, and maybe that's a good thing, in the sense that everything gets re-implemented with one common. I mean, what I've certainly seen is that like, if you've got three groups that are comparing models, but they're also using their own numerical backend, you don't know whether you're getting differences because of the numerical backend, or the model, right? And at least for a long time, people were really touchy about giving you source code in the first place. Yeah. Luckily, those days are behind us. Yeah. So I think it would be great. I'm going to try and ping as many of the authors and get a sense of what software are they going to be teaching people. See what those are, and then see if we've got alternatives. One, to maybe try and keep or have one consistent set of things in Python, just because
I think it will be at some point, right, Anmol?
Sure. Well, and maybe we can help speed that up. Or I mean,
That would be really nice. Yeah.
for fMRI and for like the neuroimaging modeling, like we can certainly have suggestions for a lot of stuff, depending on what direction your speakers are going with it. Because again, like I think that the most interesting model-based way of processing fMRI and EEG is our dynamic causal models, and it's mainly just because they include a neural model, right, of a simplified patch of cortex represented by like in the Janssen-Ritt case, 3 cell types that are representing only 3 layers of cortex, right? But like the functional part that's like directly connected to the signal that you're actually detecting, right? And that it's one of these cases that in physics that happens a lot in physics, where it's like we're making this macro measurement, but we can say something about the micro level because of this macro measurement. But that doesn't, like a lot of people don't use these models, and as I saw recently on Twitter, some people are not sure you should use these models. I'm still waiting for what's the alternative, but yeah. But really interesting to hear more about ACT-R, and what I think are multiple. What you've shown is there's going to be speakers that are presenting kind of like multiple model-based ways of modeling reaction times. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
I mean, is it mostly reaction time? Like when you say cognitive modeling, is the kind of like the behavioral measure of interest is reaction time?
Reaction, yeah.
Anybody doing any like eye tracking? Or not at this time?
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Is anybody going to be presenting on models of eye movement?
I don't think so. Not this time.
Yeah, not this time, but maybe in one of the future versions of.
Although, like many of the speakers do integrate it in their work at different points of time. Like everybody kind of have worked with eye trackers.
I'm really sorry. This time there is a special talk by a computational cognitive scientist who is working on modeling eye movement. So his name is Professor Tapan Gandhi. So he's from IIT Delhi. So so that's a special session. We have only one session of that, but he will be presenting his research on that. So that is something that.
So super interesting, right? We know, like reaction times, we know that in certain patient populations, or given certain drugs, that eye tracking measures will show very different clustering across images, for instance. Okay, super. Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So even better, Alex, if you could pull up like a Google Scholar for Dr. Gandhi.
There you go.
Oh, yep. There. Thanks. Okay. Now, so like autism in particular, right? Like, and this comes up in schizophrenia too. Like you show people a picture of a face, right? Give them, I don't know, a second, right? They're going to be in that second, the eyes are actually moving across the face. Okay. And if you look at, whether it's like a, like an energy map or like where the hot spots.
There's a standard pattern. People land on the eyes, they take in the rough shape of the head, they orient on the nose and the mouth, and then they have a series of photos of an eye tracker. You can see it, and it doesn't matter whether it's an animal or a person. You follow a very similar progression. Yeah,
right. And so so there's particular groupings that will show differences in that. There's different again, like there's drugs you can give people, and they'll start to look all over the place. And drug modeling. I mean, I was just saying, I forget which Slack I dropped this in, but drug challenges are super hot right now in terms of modeling the neuroimaging data, right? So giving people ketamine and then seeing what their EEG looks like. Guess what? It's different.
I was really surprised by a substance as benign as alcohol in the EEG. The way that it just shuts down brain activity is shocking compared to most other substances. Yeah.
And so that's one where we don't need as much permission.
Right. Yeah. It's a common.
And
so, that's why we tried it. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like the capsaicin in the sense that nobody's going to go to jail unless you let them
that's what we
drive
were
home.
hoping for. Yes, that it's you buy it at 7-Eleven and you're fine, right?
But that would be great to look at, and actually some of my first poster implementing multi-way methods and EEG analysis was driven by a researcher who was in Henry Begleiter's group back in New York, and his EEG lab's focus was alcoholism, and the publicly available EEG data set for decade plus from the University of California Irvine machine learning repository, the EEG data set is 100 subjects. It's all from Henry Begleiter's group, and it's 100 subjects or 120, and I think a third of them or half of those, it's basically alcoholic versus control in a forced in a forced choice delayed match to sample task is what it is. Yeah. It's a great data set, 64 channels from a old school EEG lab where they really scrape the scalp. So yeah, that it'd be really interesting to look at because it's got a big effect, right, Alex?
I was really surprised, and it wasn't just the frequency spectrum is normally pretty sharp, and it's got these age-related changes. So the younger you are, the sharper it is. This thing just flatlines. All the power levels come down. It's shocking.
Well, and a lot of these papers that are coming out on ketamine, DMT, et cetera, I honestly think that they get a lot more play just because nobody else can get those subjects. I mean, nobody else can get permission to do those studies, as opposed, and they don't make their analysis pipelines available. So you're kind of well, I guess that gives me this, but I have no way of doing this myself, no way of replicating this, without potentially going to jail or my subjects going to jail.
Or a lengthy IRB process.
But lengthy IRB process and not a lot of institutions that are, well, anyway.
Even when we did the caffeine, you would think that's such a benign one, but getting more than 100 milligrams approved is a major concern. What if someone has an adverse reaction? What if someone is excessively sensitive? It's a legitimate question. I didn't want to hurt anyone.
Well, it's funny. Really do come up. Adam Ghazali will tell a story about getting permission to give Aricept to controls, to healthy college kids, right? And he was like, well, one, we're giving it to everybody. We're giving it to like we, you know, if they're over 60, we'll give it to them, like no questions asked. And he said it's funny, by the time they finished the study, and it was only like 24 subjects or something like that, by the time they finished the study, they could never find any over 55-year-olds that weren't already on Aricept as a prophylactic, like not that they had Alzheimer's, you know, but it was just like, hey, we should be giving Aricept to anybody over 50. I qualify.
Right.
Where's my Aricept?
We'll start you with the flashing LED light from MIT until
I just need to do 40 hertz stimulation. Well, so I need to wrap up because I think I'm starting to actually keep my family awake.
Sure.
And it's 9:30 here in the evening. Can we have you back? And we'll touch. So when is the course?
So it starts on 13th of November. So it's from 13th to 28th, but it's only on Saturdays and Sundays. So 13th and 14th, 21st and 22nd, I believe, and 27th and 28th.
And are you taking? I mean, are you going to try to scale to any number, or are you capping it at a particular number?
Well, that is not really our call. So if we go by the last two editions of the winter school, our faculty advisors, the convener specifically was very specific about capping it at a certain amount of people, so that the interaction can be more, because if there are hundreds and hundreds of them, there is really no interaction among the students and the participants.
Well, so sure. I mean, I totally understand.
But we are looking at a significant number. I mean, it will not be very, very limited, not limited to only 20 or 30, but it will be more than, 70, 80, 90, around that range.
Sure. I mean, I think everybody should be following Neuromatch Academy these days, right? And one, for the content, and then two, for how they have bootstrapped an organization and like baked into its formation, like scale, like how do we get this out to as many people as possible, where there's TAs, there's as much interaction as you can imagine at scale, with like high quality, advanced content.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very neatly organized. Like only this time, like I got to do some little content editing there, like for a particular lecture. I guess it was deep learning. So yeah, it's very neatly organized, and all the Slack groups are there, and
very, very efficient.
People, yeah,
Right.
very efficient.
Very efficient.
I mean, I'm looking at it, and we pre-COVID, we had these plans for NeuroTechX education, and now I'm glad we didn't roll something out before seeing neurotech, the Neuromatch Academy, where it's just like, oh, okay, well that's how you should do it.
They're also hiring a CEO now, and that's a bit of a debate I see. Like,
well, I think it's like, despite the fact that it does have scaling built in, that Conrad Cording and is it Brad? forgive me for forgetting the other guys. Brad Goodman. I mean, there's a lot more people behind it, but perhaps the two principals are just like, hey, like, I am a professor at a highly ranked university. Like, it can't be my full-time job. Yeah, I mean, it's still like, even if they only have like a one full-time person working on it, like, that's amazing, right? And the fact that like it wasn't just a one-off thing. Like, this is the fourth, is that right? I think is coming up.
It's the third one. I guess the fourth one is coming.
Next year is going to be the fourth.
Next year is going to be the fourth. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, right? And so yeah. Anyway, so well, let's have you back after the course. Let's track all the software that's being used, and maybe it would be maybe the Princeton, UT Austin groups have actually done something at this point, as opposed to just putting out feelers, and we could see more about what they've done with Actar, and like I mean, I want to know, like, does Actar and other numerical models come up at Neuromatch, for instance? Like how much does that make it into? I mean, if you're looking at reinforcement learning, then it should be, this should be coming up at, neural IPS is going to be coming up. Does this make a, I mean, ICLR definitely had, I think, more cognitive science than I see at a lot of the other ones.
It traditionally has had more cognitive science than any other.
Than say, like, the computer vision ones or something like that, right? But like how much of this is can be seen as a subset of reinforcement learning, and how much of this is really a different approach, and or a different basis for, in the kind of I'm trying to think of the two people, Gary Marcus and was it Joshua Bengio? But you know what I mean? I think it was them, right? So great to have you both. I'm super glad we connected and did this. Really glad to. And so it's also officially November 5th. I'd just like to point out, which is definitely one of the reasons that I wanted to come back. So that is also a holiday, at least in the UK. Great. So we'll see you in a month, right? You said it ends the 28th?
Yeah.
It ends on the 28th. So yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I think beginning December, let's do this again.
Sounds great.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Great.
Well, it was wonderful chatting with you both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. It was a great meeting.
Well,
wonderful.
let's stay in touch on Slack, and I'm definitely going to apply.
Sure.
We're going to have our first student report on this conference. This is going to be great.
Yes.
Well, I think this was a phenomenal hack night. I think this is wonderful that everyone joined us. We're going to wrap it up so Morgan can not keep anyone up, and then you gentlemen can start your day, all that other stuff. And thank you everyone for joining us. This was a phenomenal hack